Chapter 1144. Yimeyu was not familiar with Li Xiaotian. She only knew that she was once the holy maiden of the Li Palace. At that time, she was high and mighty, and even Yishuanji had to respect her, so she was not someone she could come into contact with. Sizzle. However, this was different from the past. She, Yimeyu, was not a match for Tang Zheng, but how could she not deal with a remnant of the Li Palace? With a shout, she attacked Li Xiaotian. Li Xiaotian was not an ordinary person either. The bow in his hand flashed with a cold light and shot towards Yimeyu. Yimeyu was a Yuanying Stage 1 cultivator, 2 levels higher than Li Xiaotian's Stage 8 Great Master, but Li Xiaotian's battle experience was far richer than Yimeyu's. Seeing the arrow flying towards her, Yimeyu revealed a look of contempt and easily dodged it. She extended her hand and directly grabbed towards Li Xiaotian. Seeing that she had easily dodged his attack, Li Xiaotian's heart flashed with a trace of surprise, but he did not panic. Instead, he calmly moved his finger. Whiz! The arrow behind Yimeyu suddenly changed direction and turned back, shooting towards Yimeyu's back. Hearing the sound of the wind behind her, Yimeyu finally realized that something was wrong. She was so scared that she broke out in a cold sweat. It was already too late to turn around, and she only had time to move half a step to the left. Puff! The arrow brushed past her shoulder, bringing with it a dazzling stream of blood. Hiss! Yimeyu sucked in a breath of cold air. Her brows knitted together, and she became furious. You can actually hurt me too. The corner of Li Xiaotian's mouth hooked up into a devilish smile, causing all living things to turn upside down. Without saying a word, he hooked his finger again, and the arrow seemed to be controlled by his arm. It was extremely agile and shot towards Yimeyu's chest. You're still coming. Yimeyu growled. Puff! The arrow hit Yimeyu's body, and blood flowed down her chest. Li Xiaotian heaved a sigh of relief. The arrow had hit her heart. She was dead for sure. However, in the next second, she saw an unbelievable scene. Yimeyu actually raised her head again, and the corner of her mouth revealed a strange smile that made one's hair stand on end. What happened? Li Xiaotian's brain suddenly froze, as if he had seen a ghost, because she was very confident in her arrow. How could Yimeyu still laugh? Bam! Yimeyu grabbed the arrow and broke it into two. As if nothing had happened, she swaggered towards Li Xiaotian. Li Xiaotian subconsciously took a step back, then immediately stopped himself. He stared at Yimeyu with wide eyes and asked, "What kind of spell is this? How did you not die?" Yimeyu laughed sinisterly. "You want to kill me with this little trick? Dream on." If an ordinary person saw this scene, they would probably be scared out of their wits. However, Yimeyu had experienced hundreds of battles, and her nerves had been tested countless times. Even if this was beyond common sense, she was not scared out of her wits. Instead, she gritted her teeth and erupted with endless fighting spirit. She once again drew her bow and shot towards Yimeyu. Whiz! The sharp arrow surged through the air, leaving behind a long tail. However, Yimeyu extended her index finger and lightly tapped the air. The arrow stopped, and the attack came to an abrupt stop, as if it had been immobilized. Li Xiaotian's eyes widened again. She was very clear about the power of her arrow, but she did not expect it to be so easily resolved by the other party. Was there such a huge gap between her cultivation and Yimeyu's? She could not help but feel a sense of defeat. Yimeyu held onto the arrow and walked step by step to Li Xiaotian's side. She aimed the arrow at Li Xiaotian's heart and slowly poked it over. How could Li Xiaotian just sit there and wait for death? She immediately moved to the side, but to her horror, she found that she could not move at all, as if her feet had grown roots. What's going on? What did you do to me? The fear in Li Xiaotian's heart quickly spread as she shouted loudly. The smile on Yimeyu's face became even more sinister. She thought to herself, "How can you break my traceless dream spell? You're not Tang Zheng, who can break my traceless dream spell time and time again." Li Xiaotian watched as the arrow pierced her heart, but she was powerless. The fear of death instantly enveloped her body and mind. She tried to struggle, but to no avail. Li Xiaotian, wake up. You're dreaming. Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded from the sky, exploding in her ears like a clap of thunder. Her entire body trembled, and her heart trembled. Could it be that this was really a dream? That voice was clearly Tang Zheng's voice. She quickly closed her eyes and tried her best to tell herself that this was a dream and not to believe what she was seeing. Although she did not know the traceless dream of nightmare, she knew that this voice definitely did not ring in her ears for no reason. There was definitely something fishy going on. Although she could not figure out the reason for the time being, she still used her own experience to deal with it. She focused all of her attention and abandoned all distracting thoughts to deal with all of this. Sure enough, when she opened her eyes again, everything in front of her had changed. She regained her freedom of movement. The arrow in Yi Meiyu's hand had already pierced her chest and was close to her clothes. He quickly retreated and shot another arrow. Yi Meiyu did not expect that the other party would escape at the last moment. She hurriedly retreated and dodged the arrow. She gritted her teeth and stared at Tang Zheng in the distance. If not for Tang Zheng discovering the clues and shouting, Li Xiaotian would have died without a doubt. Just now, Li Xiaotian stood in place like a puppet, waiting for death. He was like a fish on Yi Meiyu's chopping board, waiting for her to slaughter him. Tang Zheng understood Yi Meiyu's methods very well, and immediately realized that Li Xiaotian had fallen into a dream, so he quickly reminded him loudly. At last, Li Xiaotian narrowly escaped the calamity. The others also saw this scene. The former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor all knew of the great name of the nightmare and his traceless dream spell. They immediately realized that Yi Meiyu had used this spell and couldn't help but be curious. Even Immerse, who was fighting fiercely with the Empyrean fairy, couldn't help but look at Yi Meiyu with a slightly different gaze. The most fundamental reason for all of this was because the nightmare spell was too strange. Back then, he was the only one who knew how to use the traceless dream. This was because the physique required to cultivate this spell was very special. It was not something that ordinary people could casually cultivate. But at this moment, Yi Meiyu had successfully used it, and from the looks of it, the power was not bad. Didn't this mean that the nightmare had also been revived? With the Nightmare Lord, their strength would rise to a whole new level. This was something worth celebrating. Lu Wuxin obviously understood everyone's thoughts and said regretfully, "Nightmare is no longer here." It was all because of this group of people. Yi Meiyu is Nightmare's disciple. Hearing this, it was as if thunder had struck the ground. Nightmare was so powerful, and he had the traceless dream spell, but he had actually fallen into the hands of these people. It was too inconceivable. Kill them and take revenge for the nightmare. Someone shouted, stirring up the crowd. Immerse's eyes were also filled with killing intent. When he was alive, he and Nightmare were good friends. When he heard that his old friend had actually died in the hands of these people, the killing intent on his body poured out. It was extremely terrifying. Seeing that these people had been deceived by Yi Meiyu again, Tang Zheng hurriedly reminded them loudly, "Don't believe her words. We didn't kill the nightmare. It was his good disciple, Yi Meiyu." Tang Zheng, at this point, do you still want to splash dirty water on me? Master died in your hands. I don't have the strength to avenge him. It's because I'm useless as a disciple. Seniors, please help me. Avenge my master and kill this person. Yi Meiyu pleaded pitifully. Yes, kill him. He actually dares to slander Nightmare's disciple. Do you really think we're fools? The voices of condemnation rose and fell, obviously not believing Tang Zheng's words. Tang Zheng sighed helplessly, thinking to himself, if you guys aren't fools, then what are you? Yi Meiyu was truly a good actress. He had no way of exposing her lies, so he decided not to waste his breath. A hint of cunning and complacency flashed across Yi Meiyu's eyes. The others no longer sat idly by and attacked together, most of them attacking Tang Zheng. It was obvious that he was the primary target. The pressure on Tang Zheng increased sharply. When he was facing Lu Wuxin, both sides were evenly matched and could not determine the victor for the time being. However, once the others joined in, he was clearly at a disadvantage. He fought and retreated, gradually retreating to the edge of the cliff. At the same time, the soul of the golden crow that was originally imprisoned by the Empyrean fairy's power in the sky finally broke free and soared into the sky, transforming into a sun that hung high above the 9 heavens. Immediately, other than the 3 souls of the golden crow that were shot down by Tang Zheng, the remaining 6 souls of the golden crow, along with the original sun hanging high above their heads, descended from the sky and sprinkled down on the people's bodies. It was as if they were in a sauna, and large beads of sweat appeared all over their bodies. This group of powerful cultivators, who were almost invulnerable to cold and heat, felt uncomfortable under the roasting of the 7 suns. Tang Zheng wiped the beads of sweat off his forehead. Looking at the crowd that was charging towards him again, he secretly clenched his teeth. He had already repelled the other party's attack once, but the tidal wave of attacks swept over again, causing him to be unable to deal with it. He had the intention to kill, so a few people died under his sword. This reminded him of his opponent's bloodthirst and anger, and the battle became more and more intense. The battle between the Empyrean fairy and Immerse was too intense. It was too big and earth-shattering. The others wanted to interfere, but they did not have the strength to do so. These people all turned their firepower to Tang Zheng and Li Xiaotian. Li Xiaotian's body was already covered in wounds, although she had broken Yi Meiyu's heart dream traceless spell. However, in a real face-to-face battle, especially when facing so many enemies, her cultivation was still too weak. Li Xiaotian once again realized her own shortcomings. Previously, she thought that her cultivation was advancing at a godly speed, but now she realized that the current situation was not as good as before. In the past, the Great Master Realm could run amok, but now the Great Master Realm was not enough. The return of this group of cultivators had completely broken the original world's power system and balance, causing people to feel a sense of powerlessness and frustration. Chapter 1145. Seeing Tang Zheng injured, the others were shocked. The Yellow Emperor's old subordinates were wild with joy, shouting, "Everyone, work harder! He can't hold on much longer!" Swoosh! Swoosh! The crowd once more swept over like a tide. Tang Zheng had no choice but to roar, "For Symbol's venerables!" Rumble! Amidst the loud noise, Tang Zheng appeared in front of everyone. The power of his feet directly shattered the ground, causing sand and stones to fly everywhere. His aura was terrifying. This is the 4 Symbol's venerables. These people were not unfamiliar with the 4 Symbol's venerables, because the 4 Symbol's venerables belonged to Qiyu. Back then, they had contributed greatly to the 9 Li tribe's expansion of territory. He's from the 9 Li tribe, and he's in cahoots with Qiyu. We can't let him go. Yes, he's a celestial, the same as Qiyu. This kind of person is our enemy. We can't let a tiger return to the mountains. The crowd was stirred up, and their killing intent soared. They glared at Tang Zheng with red eyes, wishing they could immediately cut him into pieces. The appearance of the 4 Symbol's venerables confirmed Tang Zheng's identity, causing an even greater reaction. Tang Zheng coldly snorted, not minding it at all. He leapt onto the 4 Symbol's venerables, disappearing in a flash. When the others saw this, their shock could be imagined. In the ancient era, the 4 Symbol's venerables had been controlled by Qiyu. Now, they had actually fallen into Tang Zheng's hands. Just what kind of relationship did they have with Qiyu? It was no wonder he had spent so much effort to ruin their plans and kill the Golden Crow soul. It turned out that he was in cahoots with Qiyu. The truth was revealed. "For Symbol's venerables, kill!" shouted Tang Zheng. Ever since the 4 Symbol's venerables had fought in the ghost world, they had ceased all activities and recuperated. Tang Zheng had not used them again. On the contrary, the Azura had temporarily taken their place and fought several times. Of course, the Shura was stronger than the 4 Symbol's venerables, but the Shura could not be controlled, and there were too many variables. Unless he had no other choice, he definitely would not have let the Shura out. With a boom, the 4 Symbol's venerables stomped heavily on the ground, causing the mountain peak to shake. With a wave of his fist, his giant arm directly swept the people in front of him away, causing them to fall to the ground in a sorry state. Lu Wuxin felt her teeth ache when she saw this scene. She had originally thought that she was going to win, but this kind of thing happened. How could she not be scared witless? However, the situation was dire, and she had no way out at all. As a result, she let out a low roar and activated her spell. The heartless willow swelled, and with a flash of green light, it rapidly entangled the four symbols venerable. The four symbols venerable's pitch-black eyes shone with a dim light. He lowered his head and glanced at the entangled, heartless willow. The tremendous pressure contracted inward, as if it wanted to crush the four symbols venerable to pieces. "Oomph, do you think you could trap me like this?" Tang Zheng's voice rang out from within the body of the four symbols warrior. Lu Wuxin's expression changed abruptly as he watched the four symbols venerables grab the willow branch and pull it violently. Pa, pa, pa. The willow branch broke into pieces. Lu Wuxin staggered back. The four symbols venerable strode forward and stood in front of Lu Wuxin. He looked down at her condescendingly, and his giant fist pounded toward her with a whoosh. Lu Wuxin took a deep breath and let out a loud roar. The heartless willow shone brightly and instantly fell to the ground. Like bamboo shoots after a rain, it rapidly grew as soon as it touched the ground. In the blink of an eye, the heartless willow grew into a giant willow tree. Thousands of branches drooped down like a canopy, slender and elegant as it stood above Lu Wuxin's head. Bang! The four symbols venerable's fist landed on the heartless willow. Lights surged, and the people around were sent flying in all directions in a sorry state. After the light dissipated, the four symbols venerable stood proudly. The heartless willow, on the other hand, was much more dilapidated. Like a withered willow, branches and leaves fell to the ground, looking especially bleak. Lu Wuxin's face was deathly pale as she looked at this scene in disbelief. Pooh! Suddenly, she opened her mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Her face became even paler and somewhat sickly. The heartless willow was heavily injured, and as its owner, she was also very uncomfortable. "You?" Lu Wuxin pointed at Tang Zheng, intermittently, unable to catch her breath, and spat out another mouthful of blood. In this battle, there was no doubt that Tang Zheng had won, and Lu Wuxin had lost. Lu Wuxin, who everyone had placed high hopes on, had lost so thoroughly that no one was prepared for it. Tang Zheng did not have the mood to be sentimental, because the Xiaoyan situation was too dangerous, and his body was already injured. He hurriedly moved over. Bang, bang, bang. One attack after another struck the four symbols venerable, causing sparks to fly, but the four symbols venerable was not injured at all. Seeing this, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air and subconsciously retreated. Especially Yi Meiyu. She fled faster than the others, hiding at the back of the crowd in a flash. Tang Zheng snorted coldly. "Where do you think you're going?" His fist went straight for Yi Meiyu. Yi Meiyu had the traceless heart dream technique, but she was unable to use it. Tang Zheng had already left a deep shadow in her heart, causing her to be unable to resist. Bang! At the last moment, Yi Meiyu relied on her remaining awareness of danger to dodge. However, she did not completely dodge. She still took the punch and flew down the cliff. Li Xiaotian secretly heaved a sigh of relief and looked at the four symbols venerable with a complicated expression. She was extremely familiar with the four symbols venerable. However, seeing it fight this time, she was still deeply shocked. On the other side, the battle between the Empyrean Fairy and Immerse was in full swing. They were both talented people with their own strengths, and it was difficult to determine the victor. Tang Zheng, shoot down all the souls of the Golden Crow. Empyrean Fairy urged. Tang Zheng's heart trembled. He once again took out the heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrow. This time it was the four symbols venerable who pulled the bow and arrow. The heaven-shocking bow was pulled into the shape of a full moon. The shooting sun arrow flickered with a cold light, aiming at the fourth soul of the Golden Crow. Whiz! The shooting sun arrow left the bowstring. Boom! Boom! With two loud sounds, the shooting sun arrow actually hit two souls of the golden crow consecutively. The souls of the golden crow exploded into balls of fire and scattered down from the sky. Immediately, there were only 5 suns and 4 souls of the golden crow left in the sky. When the others saw this scene, many of them were stunned. The soul of the golden crow was their hope, but it had fallen just like that. How were they going to revive the Yellow Emperor? This was Qi Yu's scheme. He purposely let Tang Zheng stir up this matter. He could not be allowed to continue. Everyone looked at each other, and as if they had a tacit understanding, their eyes became resolute as they silently charged towards the 4 symbols venerable. At this moment, the world seemed to have quieted down, and only the sound of the wind could be heard as they swept through the air. Bang, bang, bang. A series of attacks landed on the 4 symbols venerable's body like a tidal wave. Even though the 4 symbols venerable was incomparably sturdy, he still began to sway and was no longer able to concentrate on drawing the bow. Everyone, work together and take him down. Lu Wuxin also rushed up once again, crazily attacking the 4 symbols venerable as if he didn't care about his life. Boom! With a loud sound, the 4 symbols venerable fell to the ground, crushing a cliff and falling down from the sky. In space, several satellites aimed at the peak of the snowy mountain, capturing this scene in real time, not missing a single shot or detail. This was because the people sent by the chief had been following this group of people and finally discovered that they had climbed to the peak of the snowy mountain. Although these people could not catch up, the country's technological prowess was immense, and they immediately mobilized the satellites to investigate, capturing everything that had happened at the peak of the snowy mountain. In the capital, the chief was at a secret location, looking at the satellite footage, so shocked that he was speechless. The gusts of cold wind from the central air conditioner did not make him feel much of a chill. Instead, he was sweating profusely. He had received reports of the 10 suns hanging in the sky, as well as everything that had happened outside, and he understood that this was a catastrophe. He did not know who this group of cultivators was, but he was sure that they had something to do with Lu Wuxin. This was because he had already seen Lu Wuxin's figure on the satellite footage. When he saw Tang Zheng shoot down the soul of the golden crow, he had the urge to clap his hands in joy. Although he did not get along with Tang Zheng, he had been looking forward to seeing Tang Zheng's actions. "Chief, what should we do?" the subordinate asked anxiously. When the chief saw the remaining souls of the golden crow in the sky, his eyes flashed coldly, and he gritted his teeth, slammed his fist on the desk, and said, "Shoot them down with missiles." Tang Zheng had already fallen from the cliff, so he had no time to care about the souls of the golden crow, so the chief could only think of a solution himself. Although he did not know why these people summoned the souls of the golden crow and created so many suns, he was sure of one thing, and that was that if this continued, not only him, but the entire country would be in trouble, and he would not just watch this happen. He was the chief, and although he was usually selfish, he still clearly knew what to do and what not to do at critical moments. The subordinate obeyed the order and ordered the launch of missiles. Not long after, flames rose from several secret military bases, and a few ground-to-air missiles were launched, flying across the vast sky, leaving a long trail of flames behind and flying towards the remaining 4 souls of the golden crow. The people on the mountain peak did not notice the strange phenomenon in the sky, and when the missiles were close to the souls of the golden crow, they realized something was wrong, but it was too late to stop it. Boom, 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 boom. 4 loud sounds rang out, and the souls of the golden crow exploded, turning into flames that filled the sky. It was as if a rain of fire was falling from the sky, pattering and falling from the sky. These souls of the golden crow were basically suspended in the sky above the snowy mountain peak, so the rain of fire also fell around the snowy mountain. Suddenly, like a meteor shower, countless flames fell on the ground like meteorites, smashing large craters and igniting the forest. The flames instantly engulfed the surroundings of the snowy mountain, and the originally white snow, which had melted a lot, immediately changed into a sea of fire, bright red, as if it had changed into another world. The color of the world changed, and the snowy white turned into a fiery red, making people tremble with fear, and their hearts almost jumped out of their throats. The people on the mountain peak subconsciously stopped what they were doing and looked up at the sky blankly. The rain of fire fell beside them, but they did not feel it, as if they had lost their souls. "What's going on?" Someone muttered to himself. After these people were reincarnated, many of them did not have a detailed and intuitive experience of the current world, let alone the power of technology. Chapter 1146. Li Xiaotian looked up at the sky and was stunned for a moment before he exclaimed, "The missile hit the soul of the golden crow." Missile. Many people shivered and immediately remembered such a weapon. This was a world completely different from their memories. Apart from true qi and inner strength, there was also the power of technology. Plucking the moon from the sky and catching turtles from the sea was no longer a dream, or rather, it was no longer a privilege of cultivators. A cold glint flashed through Lu Wuxin's eyes, as if he had just woken up from a dream. He said through gritted teeth, "It must be his order." There was no doubt about this. Apart from the chief, who else could be so concerned about cultivators and able to mobilize missiles? Bang! Another loud sound rang out, but this time it didn't come from the sky but from the foot of the mountain. The venerable of four symbols fell off the cliff and landed heavily on the mountain slope, creating a huge crater and causing a huge avalanche. The rumbling sound was like rolling thunder from the sky. Li Xiaotian and the Empyrean fairy were shocked. They rushed to the edge of the cliff and saw the venerable of four symbols' huge body lying in the snow. Suddenly, the venerable of four symbols disappeared. The two of them sighed in relief. This meant that the venerable of four symbols had been sucked into Tang Zheng's Sumera heaven, and that Tang Zheng was fine. As expected, a sword gleam blossomed from the snow as Tang Zheng flew up on his sword. Li Xiaotian and the Empyrean fairy looked at each other and saw the relief in each other's eyes. Tang Zheng flew to the peak of the snowy mountain and looked at the scene in the sky in surprise. "What's going on?" He didn't see the scene in the sky when he was inside the venerable of four symbols' body, so he didn't know the reason. "The missile hit the soul of the golden crow," Li Xiaotian quickly explained. Tang Zheng was so shocked that his jaw almost dropped to the ground. Wasn't the chief with Lu Wuxin? Why would he order a missile to attack the soul of the golden crow? He shook his head in confusion, thinking that their relationship as allies wasn't as strong as he thought. No matter what the relationship between the two parties was, or what the chief's motive was, this was undoubtedly something he was happy to see. He subconsciously turned his head to look at Lu Wuxin. Her expression was extremely ugly. Actually, when he thought about it, it made sense. After being stabbed in the back, no one would feel good about it. Lu Wuxin gritted his teeth and secretly made up his mind. After this matter, he would definitely return to the capital and settle the score with the chief. The soul of the golden crow was completely struck, and the heat dissipated. Everyone felt a chill run down their spines, as if they had been doused with a bucket of ice water during the dog days of June. However, Immerse's entire body was burning with an evil fire that could explode at any moment. He hatefully asked, "Who did all of this?" "I know who it is," Lu Wuxin replied. "It can't be anyone else other than the chief." "Who is the leader?" Immerse asked. "I'll take you to him," Lu Wuxin said. Tang Zheng looked at this group of people with a mocking expression and said, "What else can you do?" Immerse snorted angrily and looked at Tang Zheng with a burning gaze. "Do you think we're helpless just because of this?" Tang Zheng was just about to ask the other what else they could do when the inner demons beat him to it. "Young man, don't be happy too early. Although the soul of the golden crow has been struck, it hasn't completely disappeared. If there's a way to gather them together, we can still resurrect the Yellow Emperor." Tang Zheng felt as if he had been hit in the head. He looked at the rain of fire falling from the sky in shock and asked, "Could it be that the soul of the golden crow is among those scattered flames?" "Smart." Tang Zheng looked at the rain of fire that filled the sky, falling in all directions. There were countless places, and if he wanted to gather all of them back together, it would be an extremely difficult project. Nothing in this world is difficult for those who set their mind to it. If the Yellow Emperor's subordinates didn't even have this bit of willpower and means, how could they have defeated Chiyu back then? The inner demons mercilessly poured a bucket of cold water on him. Tang Zheng felt dejected. He had been too naive and beautiful. The people who wanted to kill each other just now fell into a terrifying silence because of the missiles. The Yellow Emperor's subordinates all looked at Immerse. Clearly, they wanted to listen to his orders. Immerse was about to speak when suddenly Xiaotian pointed to the sky and shouted, "Look, there are missiles again." There were indeed missiles in the sky, and there was more than one. They fell from the sky and flew towards the peak of the snowy mountain. Seeing this scene, many people were still confused. They didn't know what was going on. Tang Zheng was the first to react. He shouted, "Run!" He pulled Li Xiaotian and flew away from the peak of the snowy mountain. The Empyrean fairy also reacted. These missiles were no longer aimed at the soul of the Golden Crow, but at them. There were very few people at the peak of the snowy mountain. Other than them, there was no one else. Why not use the missiles to wipe them out in one fell swoop? This was a way to solve the problem once and for all. The leader definitely wouldn't miss this godsend opportunity. The Empyrean fairy rose into the air and flew away. Immerse and Lu Wuxin also reacted at the same time. They shouted, "Let's leave this place quickly." They didn't care about the others and flew away with a whoosh. Boom, 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 boom. The missiles hit the peak of the snowy mountain. The dense explosion created a mushroom cloud. The powerful shockwave spread in all directions. It was as if the sky was about to be torn apart. The sunlight was overshadowed by this earth-shattering explosion. The towering snow-capped mountain collapsed with a loud bang. Rocks and snow flew in all directions, mixing with the shockwave and spreading in all directions. The forest that was originally on fire was razed to the ground by the shockwave, and the flames disappeared in an instant. In the sky far away, a few people stood in the air and stared at this scene. Many people were so scared that they broke out in cold sweat. This was the first time they felt fear after being reincarnated. It turned out that they weren't as strong and invincible as they thought. Everyone looked around and glanced at each other in dismay. Many familiar faces had disappeared. Those people didn't manage to escape in time. They were hit by the missiles and buried in the snowy mountain. Who would have thought that they would die like this after being reincarnated? Dying before achieving victory was probably just like this. They're gone just like that, someone said in disbelief. The Ganjiang sword at Immerse's feet emitted a blood-red glow and surged with killing intent. He said in a low voice, "Don't worry, I'll avenge you." Lu Wuxin's expression was as cold as ice. He said through gritted teeth, "Leader, just you wait. No matter where you hide, I'll find you even if I have to dig 3 feet in the ground." Immerse looked around and asked, "Where are those people? How come they're gone?" Lu Wuxin was astonished. He didn't see any trace of Tang Zheng's group. They must have taken the opportunity to escape. With their speed, they can't be buried on the snowy mountain. What about Nightmare's disciple, Ashi? Only then did Lu Wuxin remember that Yi Meiyu had been knocked off the cliff by the 4 symbols venerable. Even if she didn't die, she would have been affected by the explosion and crushed to death on the cliff. "Senior! Senior!" Suddenly, a voice came from the side. It was actually Yi Meiyu. She was in a sorry state, as if she had crawled out of a garbage dump. Her entire body was covered in mud and blood. "You're not dead." Lu Wuxin was overjoyed and immediately landed. The others also landed one after another. Looking at the pale Yi Meiyu, they understood that she had escaped death and couldn't help but feel lucky for her. Yi Meiyu had indeed escaped death. After taking that attack from the 4 symbols venerable, she had almost lost half of her life. After she fell off the cliff, she immediately dragged her injuries and fled. She didn't dare to go to the top of the snowy mountain again, afraid that she would lose half of her life again. Fortunately, she had escaped early, so when the missile hit the snowy mountain, she had already escaped the range of the attack. However, The powerful shockwave still caused her to suffer greatly, and she almost lost her remaining half of her life. Yi Meiyu wanted to cry, but no tears came out. She felt that the sky was about to collapse, especially when she turned around to look at the remaining half of the snowy mountain. Her soul was almost scared out of her body, as she thought that Lu Wuxin and the others had all died inside. When she raised her head to look at the sky, she was pleasantly surprised to find some figures. Only then did she understand that they were not dead. Where's Tang Zheng? Are they dead? Yi Meiyu realized that there was no sign of Tang Zheng and the others in the crowd, and hurriedly asked, "They escaped." Escaped? How could he escape? Yi Meiyu muttered to herself in frustration. She understood that this time, she had truly angered Tang Zheng. The next time she faced him, he would definitely use his killing move, and she might not be so lucky this time. Don't worry, you're Nightmare's disciple. With us here, we definitely won't let Tang Zheng hurt you. Lu Wuxin patted her shoulder and comforted her. Yi Meiyu felt uneasy and nodded her head resentfully. Immerse, we've lost our soldiers and generals, and we've failed on the verge of success. What should we do now? Lu Wuxin asked Immerse. Back then, she and Immerse were both generals under the Yellow Emperor, but Immerse was more highly regarded by the Yellow Emperor. Unknowingly, Immerse's status was higher. Immerse looked at the messy ground and said, "Gathering the soul of the Golden Crow bit by bit is the most important thing. As for the chief, when I settle this matter, I will naturally find him to settle the score." Tang Zheng and the other two hid in a hidden place and looked at this group of people from afar. They couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. The missiles had destroyed a portion of them, but the rest of them were still not to be underestimated. What should we do? Emperor Fairy did not act rashly, and instead asked Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng really wanted to rush out and fight another 300 rounds to determine the victor, but he knew that this kind of impulsive action would not have any effect. The strength of this group of people could not be underestimated. Even if he summoned the Azura, he might not be able to wipe them all out. Although they could still gather the soul of the Golden Crow, the inner demon said that it was not something that could be done in a short period of time. This made Tang Zheng feel a lot more at ease. In addition, with the return of the demon clan, Qi Yu would definitely be reborn. These people and the demon clan were old enemies, so why not leave them behind to keep the demon clan in check? With this thought in mind, he made a decision. Let's go first. At the same time, in the capital, the bureau chief saw the image sent back by the satellite and sat paralyzed on the chair. The attack that he had prepared for was actually unable to wipe out this group of people. Chapter 1147. The despair in the chief's eyes was obvious. Although he had selfish motives, he ordered the missile attack on the soul of the Golden Crow to protect the common people. However, these people would blame this on him. No matter what, he would not be able to clear his name. The dangers and difficulties he would face would be unimaginable. What should I do? What should I do? He stood up and paced around anxiously like an ant on a hot pan. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind as he remembered the High Lord Ji Wuxian. He swore to borrow 100,000 soldiers from me to train the celestial chess. I wonder how effective it is. These people are targeting me. He's the only one who can save me. At this point, he could no longer remain calm and immediately rushed to his secret military base. A few days later, Tang Zheng and the rest returned to the capital. In the streets and alleys, they could clearly feel that the atmosphere had changed. The passers-by looked up at the sky from time to time, as if they were afraid that an extra sun would suddenly appear. The scene from that day was still deeply imprinted in their minds. The feeling of doomsday was so real that many people felt a deep sense of fear. Although the government later refuted the rumors, many experts used all kinds of complicated and profound astronomical knowledge to explain that this was just a rare astronomical phenomenon. However, the general public was not so easily fooled. They snorted and did not believe it at all. A rumor quietly appeared and caused a stir. Many people associated it with the legend of Ho Yi shooting down the sun. Could this be the scene in the legend? If so, wouldn't this world be even more dangerous? These speculations did not have enough evidence, but they were very popular and many people believed it. Tang Zheng and the rest walked through the streets and alleys and heard bits and pieces. He was not surprised. If the government covered it up, there would naturally be rumors among the people. This was no longer important. When he returned to the capital, Mu Hongyan had also returned. The matter of the pharmaceutical factory had come to an end. The new medicine had finally been released. Mu Hongyan naturally handled these matters, so Tang Zheng did not need to worry. As for the effect of the medicine and the market, Tang Zheng was not worried at all. These medicines could not only cure many diseases, but also strengthen the body. After the Huaxia people took this medicine, their bodies would definitely become stronger. Many Western powers used to scornfully call Huaxia the sick man of East Asia. Now, Huaxia had gone through several generations of arduous struggles, and its national strength was strong, but its body was still incomparable to most Westerners. With this new medicine, Huaxia's body would also rise and become stronger. No one would dare to put the shameful name of the sick man of East Asia on the heads of Huaxia. Tang Zheng's attention did not linger on the new medicine for long, because another piece of news from the elders of the sorcerer tribe attracted everyone's attention. The energy in the crystals on the island was almost depleted. In other words, the crystals were about to disappear, and the scarlet lunar beast was about to come out. The disciples of the sorcerer tribe absorbed the energy of the crystal day and night. Not only did their cultivation increase, more importantly, they could release the red lunar beast to solve the question they had in the past. Tang Zheng could not wait to activate the teleportation array. This time, he was not the only one who wanted to witness the scene of the scarlet lunar beast breaking free. Little Yu was the most excited. It could not stop crying and jumping up and down. Its intelligence was gradually increasing, and it was also curious about its own origin. It was more curious about the same kind of creature in the crystal than the others. The others were also very excited. They were eager to try and look forward to it. In the teleportation array, Tang Zheng, the Empyrean Fairy, and Tian Chanzi were standing in it. They understood the cause and effect of the strange phenomenon in the sky a few days ago, and they were even more worried. If they could take this opportunity to unravel the secret of the Outland, they would be able to find a way to solve their current predicament. Now, Tang Zheng had made enemies on all sides, but this was not his intention. It was just that there were many things in the world that he could not do, and there were many things that he could not ignore. He did not regret it. Even if he was given another chance, he would not hesitate to make the same choice. Especially this time, Immerse's actions made him realize that the ancients were not as good as the legends said. They would do anything to achieve their goals. Instead of hoping that their return could make the world a better place, it was more reliable to take the initiative in his own hands. Everyone, stand properly. Tang Zheng reminded them and activated the teleportation array. A light flashed, and the scene in front of them changed drastically. They had arrived at the island. The sea breeze blew, and everyone was energized. The elders had been waiting there for a long time, and they all went forward to greet Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng waved his hand and said, "Elder, let's go and see the red moon beast first." The elder understood and reported as he walked. "Great messenger, we followed your instructions and absorbed the energy of the crystal day and night. With our cultivation, it was like trying to put out a burning cart with a cup of water. We did not know how long it would take for us to finish absorbing the energy of the crystal. However, ever since the Empyrean Fairy came and absorbed the energy for a period of time, the crystal became much thinner. After everyone's hard work, there was finally an effect, and only a thin layer of the crystal was left. We did not dare to act rashly, so we stopped. It was reasonable for the elder to be careful. The mystery and power of the Red Moon Beast could not be explained in a few words. Moreover, this was a serious matter, and they could not afford to be careless. If they continued to absorb the energy and the Red Moon Beast escaped, how could they stop it? The elder did not think that the sorcerer tribe members on the island would be able to stop it. Therefore, he hoped that Tang Zheng would complete the last step. Even if there were any problems, Tang Zheng was more powerful than him, and he would naturally have a way to deal with it. Tang Zheng nodded and praised, "Elder, it's been hard on you. You've done a good job." The elder smiled and said, "We're just following the great messenger's instructions. It's mainly because the great messenger has taught us well." Finally, they arrived in front of the crystal. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the crystal. There was only a thin layer of the crystal left, and it was like a layer of transparent ice. Although it was only a thin layer, it had extraordinary power, and it was able to stop the Red Moon Beast. This was the result of many tests by the sorcerer tribe. They were worried that the Red Moon Beast would break through the thin layer of the crystal and escape. In the end, after many tests and tests, they came to a conclusion that no matter how thin the crystal was, even if it was as thin as a piece of white paper, the Red Moon Beast would not be able to break through. The crystal seemed to have an invisible and mysterious power that was blocking the Red Moon Beast. The Red Moon Beast widened its eyes and stared at the group of uninvited guests. Its gaze was complicated, and it was conveying many things that no one knew. Tang Zheng also stared at the Red Moon Beast. He stretched out his hand and gently touched the surface of the crystal. He muttered to himself, "Where did you come from? What secrets do you have? Today we'll find out. After you break free, it's best that you don't act rashly to avoid hurting our relationship." The Red Moon Beast rolled its eyes. No one knew if it agreed with Tang Zheng or disagreed with him. "Is it very powerful?" Feng Sure asked curiously. "What's there to be afraid of? There are so many of us, and it's only one. Are we not its match?" Yi Dingdang was not afraid of anything, and did not put the Red Moon Beast in its eyes. Wu also nodded fearlessly. "Yes, why would we be afraid of it?" Little Yu walked around the crystal with its 4 legs. There was a complicated look in its eyes. It knew nothing about its own kind. However, there was a feeling of closeness that came from its body. Especially now that the crystal had become very thin, this feeling of closeness was especially strong. Xiaobai rode on little Yu's back and looked up at the Red Moon Beast. He chuckled and said, "I have already thought of a name for it. You're called Little Yu, so it will be called Big Yu." As it spoke, it shook its head and waved its 2 claws in the air, as if it was very satisfied with the name it came up with. Little Yu rolled its eyes speechlessly. It was unable to refute. The Red Moon Beast looked at Xiaobai deeply and did not have any reaction. "Master, hurry up and let it out. I can't wait to play with it. I have a feeling that it will definitely be more fun than the 5-clawed golden dragon." Xiaobai urged eagerly. I'm not going to play with you. I'm not a toy." The 5-clawed golden dragon was indignant, and a little resentful voice sounded in Tang Zheng's mind. Tang Zheng looked at the Empyrean Fairy and Tian Chanzi and said, "Let's do it together." Although it was only a thin layer of the crystal, the energy it contained could not be underestimated. If Tang Zheng were to absorb this energy alone, it would take a long time. The 3 of them were all experts in the divine transformation realm. If they worked together to absorb the energy from the crystal, they would be able to shorten the time. The Empyrean Fairy and Tian Chanzi also could not wait to see the Red Moon Beast break free. They nodded in understanding and walked in front of the crystal. The 3 of them pressed their hands on the crystal at the same time and exchanged glances. Then, they began to circulate their energy. Whoosh, 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 a powerful energy was transferred from the crystal to the palms of the 3 of them. It stirred up the air around them and caused the sound of wind to blow. The others opened their eyes wide and stared at this scene. Their eyes were filled with splendor. The 3 of them were very powerful. Therefore, when they started to circulate their energy to absorb the energy from the crystal started to become thinner and thinner at an extremely fast speed. It was as if the others had been immobilized. Their bodies stiffened at the same time. Their eyes were filled with anticipation. The Red Moon Beast's eyes lit up little by little. Its bright eyes gradually turned blood red. They were like 2 blood moons hanging high in the sky. They were filled with a mysterious aura. The eyes of Tang Zheng and the other 2 also lit up. They could feel an enormous aura from the crystal stone. This aura was filled with ruthlessness, arrogance, and barbarism, causing one's emotions to fluctuate and become agitated. Whoosh! The crystal disappeared from where the red moon beast was standing. Bang! Its four limbs landed heavily on the ground, making a uniform sound. After a while, the crystal on its body disappeared as well. Its muscles and bones emitted a crackling sound like thunder. Then, the crystal on its head disappeared as well. The crystal on the surface of its body disappeared completely. Chapter 1148. With the disappearance of the crystal, the red lunar beast regained its freedom. It stretched its body and raised its head proudly. Its eyes were glowing red. Purple, its body was as tall as an adult human. It stomped on the ground with all four of its legs. Its strong muscles showed its strength, and its entire body was emitting an aura that kept people away. Tang Zheng and the other two stood in front of the red lunar beast. Although their expressions did not change, they were ready to attack. If the red lunar beast made any strange moves, they would attack together. Bang! The red lunar beast lifted its leg and stomped on the ground, creating a huge pit. The ground cracked, and a gust of wind blew. Many people trembled in fear and looked at the red lunar beast nervously. Red lunar beast, I helped you regain your freedom. Shouldn't you thank me? Tang Zheng asked calmly. You humans are so cunning. Why should I thank you? A cold voice came out from the red lunar beast's throat. Everyone was shocked. They did not expect it to be able to speak. Little you could not speak. It was obvious that it was still a cub and was still weak. Tang Zheng was relieved. Since it could speak, it would be easier to communicate with it. There are thousands of humans. Some are cunning and some are kind. It's the same with you red lunar beasts. Are there no cunning red lunar beasts? Tang Zheng retorted. Pain flashed in the red lunar beast's eyes. That question seemed to have hit its sore spot. Its eyes became ferocious, and it opened its bloody mouth. Roar! With a mad roar, a fishy wind blew over like a gale, messing up everyone's hair. Many of the sorcerer tribesmen were frightened by the roar. They were too weak in front of the red lunar beast's powerful aura, and their minds could not withstand it. Tang Zheng did not step back. He waved his hand and said calmly, A loud voice does not mean that you are right. I'm right. You want to win with your voice? That's not a good idea. The Scarlet Moon Beast was enraged as it bent down. Its large head was inches away from Tang Zheng as it stared at him. Tang Zheng lifted his eyelids, lightly looked at him, and said with an unquestionable tone, I ask, you answer. Who do you think you are? The Red Moon Beast said disdainfully. Since I let you out, I can be considered your benefactor. Treating your benefactor like this is not a wise decision. Tang Zheng shook his head and sighed. The Red Moon Beast lifted its feet and was ready to leave. It did not want to bother with Tang Zheng at all. Tang Zheng and the others looked at each other. They understood that if they did not fight, they would not be able to subdue the Red Lunar Beast. Whoosh! The Red Moon Beast had already launched its attack. Its sharp claws were aimed at Tang Zheng, as if it was going to turn him into a meat patty. Tang Zheng raised his eyebrows and raised his arm high. Bang! With a loud bang, the fist and the claw collided. Both sides took half a step back at the same time, staring at each other fiercely. The Scarlet Lunar Beast was shocked by Tang Zheng's strength. Tang Zheng was also shocked by the Scarlet Lunar Beast's cultivation. That punch had delivered a lot of information. Tang Zheng's eyes flashed. Since the battle had already started, there was no reason to stop. As a result, Tang Zheng's leg flew up and fiercely whipped the Scarlet Moon Beast's head. Bang! The Scarlet Lunar Beast was lying on the ground. The huge impact caused the ground to shake a few times. However, its reaction was also very fast. With a roar, it jumped up and pounced towards Tang Zheng. Swish! Sword light flashed. The Battle Soul sword appeared and stabbed towards the Scarlet Lunar Beast's abdomen. Whoosh! The Scarlet Lunar Beast's long tail swept over like a whip. The tip of the tail flashed coldly and clashed with the Battle Soul sword. Sparks flew everywhere. Bang, bang, bang. In an instant, both sides had launched dozens of attacks. Sparks flew everywhere, and it was hard to tell who had the upper hand. The Empyrean Fairy and Tian Chanzi did not help. Although the Scarlet Lunar Beast was powerful, Tang Zheng was not a pushover either. He was not worried about losing. The Scarlet Lunar Beast became more and more courageous as it fought. It was obvious that it was recovering its strength after being imprisoned for so many years. Bang! Tang Zheng was finally knocked to the ground. With a pu sound, the War Soul sword stabbed into the ground as if it was cutting tofu. Tang Zheng knelt down on one knee and raised his head, his eyes shining as he looked at the Scarlet Lunar Beast. From the previous battle, he had a rough estimation. In terms of combat strength, the Scarlet Lunar Beast was more powerful than him. In other words, it was equivalent to a divine transformation realm cultivator. Especially its tail, it was not inferior to a divine weapon and was more agile than a divine weapon. Because it was a part of its body, its attacks were more powerful. Tang Zheng was not afraid. Instead, he was pleasantly surprised. Since the Scarlet Lunar Beast was so powerful, it meant that little you would be as powerful in the future. The Scarlet Lunar Beast did not stop. Instead, it rushed towards Tang Zheng like a madman. It seemed that it would not stop until it defeated him. Empyrean Fairy moved half a step and was ready to intercept the Scarlet Lunar Beast. However, little Yu was one step ahead of her. With a low roar, she stood in front of Tang Zheng. Xiaobai rode on little Yu's back. He bared his fangs and stretched out his furry claws. He aimed at the Scarlet Lunar Beast and shouted, "Stop!" Bang! The Scarlet Lunar Beast's hooves landed heavily on the ground, splashing rocks. However, it stopped steadily in front of Xiaobai and did not move forward. Xiaobai looked at the Scarlet Lunar Beast angrily and scolded, "How dare you hurt my master? You are asking for a beating." He pretended to swing his claws. The Scarlet Lunar Beast did not dodge. Xiaobai's claws slapped the Scarlet Lunar Beast's face. With a swoosh, the Scarlet Lunar Beast's huge body flew out like a cannonball and crashed into the ground. It was in a sorry state. Many people exclaimed. However, Empyrean Fairy and Tang Zheng were not surprised. This was because they had seen the Scarlet Lunar Beast crawling on the ground and kowtowing to Xiaobai. Now you know that you are in the wrong? You will not listen to me unless I hit you. Xiaobai was a careless person. He did not seem to realize what this meant and said carelessly. The Scarlet Lunar Beast laid on the ground and did not have any intention of lifting its head. It was trembling in fear. Tang Zheng frowned and walked over. He asked, "Scarlet Lunar Beast, can you answer my question honestly now?" Judging from the Scarlet Lunar Beast's attitude, Tang Zheng thought of a possibility. Xiaobai's background was very mysterious. Even Qi Yu could not explain it. Perhaps the Scarlet Lunar Beast knew about Xiaobai's background. It might even have an unusual relationship with Xiaobai. However, the Scarlet Lunar Beast turned a deaf ear to Tang Zheng's question. Seeing this, Xiaobai snorted in dissatisfaction. "How dare you pretend to be deaf and mute and not answer your master's question?" As it spoke, it jumped down from little Yu's back and walked to the Scarlet Lunar Beast's head that was lying on the ground. It stretched out its claws as if it wanted to hit the Scarlet Lunar Beast's head hard. Suddenly, little Yu jumped in front of Xiaobai and protected the Scarlet Lunar Beast. It kept shaking its head at Xiaobai as if it was begging it not to do anything. Little Yu looked at little Yu in surprise and asked, "Little Yu, why are you protecting it?" Little Yu cried out a few times, but no one understood it. Ever since the Scarlet Lunar Beast was freed from the crystal, little Yu felt a strong sense of closeness to it. The Scarlet Lunar Beast was like a relative to it, so it could not bear to see the Scarlet Lunar Beast hurt. Besides that, little Yu also had a sense of respect for Xiaobai from the bottom of its heart. It did not dare to go against it, so it was stuck in the middle and could only beg for mercy. Xiaobai was confused and looked at little Yu unhappily, as if it had betrayed him. He muttered, "Little Yu, although you are the same species as it, it's a bad guy. You're a good kid, so don't trust it." Little Yu cried and shook its head as if it was trying to explain. Seeing this, Tang Zheng interrupted, "Xiaobai, stop fooling around. Ask the Scarlet Lunar Beast where it came from." Tang Zheng knew that the Scarlet Lunar Beast would not listen to him, so he asked Xiaobai to ask on his behalf. Xiaobai responded with an "oh" and asked lazily, "Let me ask you, where did you come from?" The scarlet lunar beast laid its head on the ground and answered loudly, "I came from the outland." Everyone was shocked. Although they already knew this, they were still shocked when the scarlet lunar beast confirmed it. Asked it why it came to this world. Tang Zheng asked again. Xiaobai repeated Tang Zheng's question like a mouthpiece. The scarlet lunar beast answered honestly, "I'm here to look for you." "What? Look for me?" Xiaobai was shocked and looked at the scarlet lunar beast in disbelief. "Raise your head. We don't know each other. Why are you here to look for me?" The scarlet lunar beast slowly raised its head and looked at Xiaobai with its big eyes in awe. The awe came from the bottom of its heart and was not fake. When the others heard this, they were shocked. They had thought of many possibilities, but they did not expect this to be the case. The scarlet lunar beast came to this world to look for Xiaobai. What was Xiaobai's identity that made the scarlet lunar beast travel thousands of miles to find him? Everyone's curiosity was piqued. If they could find the answer to this question, many of their doubts would be solved. "Because you're the hope of our people," the scarlet lunar beast said excitedly. "Hope?" Xiaobai was confused. Its little brain was not enough to understand. It turned to look at Tang Zheng and asked, "Master, I don't understand what it's saying anymore." "Ask it who you are," Tang Zheng said after pondering for a few seconds. Xiaobai nodded and asked, "Who am I?" The scarlet lunar beast looked at Xiaobai in shock. It did not understand why Xiaobai did not know its identity. "Why are you looking at me like that?" "Hurry up and answer my question," Xiaobai urged impatiently. The scarlet lunar beast looked like it had just woken up from a dream. It said, "You're the king of the outland." "What?" Exclamations were heard. Not only Tang Zheng, but even the Empyrean fairy and the rest shouted at the same time. Their jaws almost dropped to the ground. "King of the outland? Are you sure you're not joking? Xiaobai is the holy beast of the sorcerer tribe. How could it be the king of the outland? The difference between the two of them is too big." Chapter 1150. Seeing that the Scarlet Moon Beast had calmed down, everyone was impressed by Xiaobai's power. "Don't mess around anymore. Otherwise, I'll really get angry." Lil White pouted and said faintly. The Scarlet Moon Beast's bloodshot eyes gradually brightened, but it was still staring at the crystal. It said unwillingly, "Your Majesty, she must have killed my wife and taken her inner core." Xiaobai tilted his head and looked at the crystal. "Then, she's really a bad person. Of course. She's one of the traitors. She's unforgivable. Even if I cut her into pieces, it won't be enough to appease my hatred," the Scarlet Moon Beast said while gritting its teeth. Xiaobai turned to look at Tang Zheng, not knowing what to do. Tang Zheng said thoughtfully, "You said that she killed your wife. Did your wife come to this world too? How did you guys come to this world?" "Many years ago, my pregnant wife and I hid from place to place in the realm beyond heaven in order to avoid being hunted down by these traitors. In the end, we accidentally came across a space door that only appears once in 10,000 years. My wife and I went through the space door and came to this world. Back then, the Queen went through the space door and left outer heaven. We hoped that we could go through the space door and meet up with them." The Scarlet Moon Beast's eyes shone with a complicated light. It seemed that it was talking to itself, and it could not help but feel regretful. "I regret it so much. When we went through the space door, we encountered the space-time turbulence. In the end, we were separated. Moreover, I was injured in the space door, and my cultivation was greatly reduced. At the last moment, I sealed myself and came to this world." Tang Zheng was shocked as this was a new piece of information. So there was actually a space-time gate between the two worlds, and from what the Scarlet Moon Beast said, this space-time gate was naturally formed and not man-made. "Ever since I came to this world, I was captured by a group of people to be studied. My cultivation was not restored, and I couldn't break through the shackles of the crystal. I was at their mercy," the Scarlet Moon Beast said with hatred. In fact, it was not hard to imagine. Since the Scarlet Moon Beast was able to escape the pursuit of his enemies, it meant that he was not an ordinary person. In the end, he had become the meat on the chopping board for the Swedes to study. This was not a happy thing. Of course, another point also caught Tang Zheng's attention. "You said that you were injured and your cultivation base dropped sharply, and then you couldn't break through the shackles of the crystal. What's going on?" Tang Zheng asked curiously. The Scarlet Lunar Beast said proudly, "This is the natural protective measure of us Scarlet Lunar Beasts. If we are injured and our power is weakened, this crystal stone seal will protect us. Even if we want to come out, we won't be able to do it. This is a force protective measure. Only when we're strong enough will we be able to unlock the seal of the crystal stone on our own so that our lives won't be in danger." That night, there was an exception, and that was people like you. The Red Lunar Beast looked around, and the group of people stared at it without blinking. What it meant was that it was like Tang Zheng was using the human wave tactic to absorb the energy of the crystal stone bit by bit. Then, even if it did not want to come out, it would not be able to. Tang Zheng smiled awkwardly. "We were forced to do this because we wanted to know more about you and the outer world. Since Xian Yin didn't want to cooperate with us, we had no choice but to do this." The Scarlet Lunar Beast snorted and said, "If it wasn't for the fact that Her Majesty was with you, I definitely wouldn't have let you go." Tang Zheng smiled and did not point out the loophole in its words. With the Empyrean Fairy and Tian Chanzi around, even if it really fought back, it might not be able to win. However, it said that it was injured and its cultivation base had not fully recovered. Once it regained its sight, it was unknown how strong its combat power would be. "You said that you came to this world through the space door. What exactly is the space door?" Tang Zheng asked again. This was an important question, and he had to ask. The Scarlet Lunar Beast looked at everyone proudly, as if it was a university student looking at a group of elementary school students. It said jokingly, "You guys don't even know about the space door? You guys are too weak." Tang Zheng did not feel ashamed. Even Qi Yu and the inner demons had never mentioned the space door. Therefore, it was not shameful that he did not know about it. "Then can you talk about the space door?" As the name suggests, the space door is a door that connects different spaces. The space door can be considered to be created, but it must be very powerful. However, it can also be formed naturally. However, this is something that can only be found by chance. It is rare to see it even in 10,000 years. Also, the space door does not only connect two worlds, it connects many worlds. There's a space-time turbulence in it. Once you encounter the turbulence, you can be lost in the space door forever until you die. The Scarlet Lunar Beast talked endlessly. It still had a lingering fear when it talked about the space-time turbulence. Previously, it was attacked by the space-time turbulence in the space door and was severely injured. If it had not sealed itself at the last moment, it would not have been able to escape death. Tang Zheng and the others looked at each other and nodded secretly. This was a very knowledgeable lesson that helped them understand many unknown areas. It was obvious that the residents of the outer sky knew more about the mysteries of space than the humans of this world. "Do you know what happened to my wife after she came to this world?" The Scarlet Lunar Beast asked curiously. Tang Zheng looked troubled. It was a long time ago, and he did not have much information about it. Therefore, he did not know what happened to the Scarlet Lunar Beast's wife. Seeing Tang Zheng shake his head, the Scarlet Lunar Beast was disappointed. It stared at the crystal and said, "She definitely knows." Tang Zheng had an idea and asked, "Did she come to this world with you?" "No, the space door was very hidden. Other than my wife and I, no one else discovered it. As for how she came to this world, I have no idea," the Scarlet Lunar Beast explained. Tang Zheng sighed and felt that it was a pity. Although some of his questions had been answered, there were still too many questions that were looming over his head. However, the space door can be opened by gathering the power of many people. Therefore, she must have been sent here by the traitors. Those people are not weak. The Scarlet Lunar Beast said hatefully. Tang Zheng nodded his head. Since he was able to start a rebellion and kill off the original imperial family, then he was definitely not an ordinary person. Since the natives of the outer sky were so powerful, the cultivators who were expelled must not have had it easy. They must have been attacked by the natives. Otherwise, the demon race would not have spent so much effort to return. When he thought of the demon race, Tang Zheng could not help but think of the Mountain River blood sacrifice array. The demon race also came back from the space door from the outer sky. This meant that the space door could be opened smoothly. The demon race actually created such a powerful array. Although it was bloody and cruel, it was not simple. The person who created this array and planned ahead was definitely a real hero. However, there was no information about this person in the records. Perhaps only the higher-ups of the demon race knew about this secret. Why did those traitors open the space door and come to this world? Tang Zheng asked. The scarlet lunar beast rolled its eyes and said, "What else could it be? It must be to find the queen and kill her." Tang Zheng did not comment. He felt that things were not as simple as the scarlet lunar beast thought. If Xianyin was only here to kill the queen, why did she bewitch New Era to expel the cultivators? This was too puzzling. There must be some unknown secret. Also, no matter what the purpose was, it was impossible for the outer sky to only send Xianyin. Where were the others? Why was Xianyin the only one left? Tang Zheng felt like his head was about to explode. He felt that the questions were piling up like a mountain. Although he was smart and resourceful, there was no way he could figure it out. He subconsciously turned his head to look at the crystal. Only Xianyin could answer all these questions. It was a pity that she was hiding in the crystal. There was no way he could get an answer from her. Although the scarlet lunar beast was ferocious, it was not stupid. When it saw Tang Zheng's reaction, it immediately guessed that he had other thoughts. It asked, "Don't you agree with my point of view?" Tang Zheng smiled and told it about his doubts. The scarlet lunar beast did not know much about the expulsion of the cultivators. However, when it heard Tang Zheng's words, it immediately understood that there was something fishy about it. The Empyrean Fairy and the others had the same idea as Tang Zheng. She said, "Since Xianyin wants to be a coward, then we should do the same. Let's absorb all the energy in Xianyin's crystal. Then, she will have nowhere to hide." This was a big project. It took a lot of time to absorb the scarlet lunar beast crystal. If they were to absorb Xianyin's crystal, there was another risk. Xianyin could come out by herself. Then they would need the Empyrean Fairy in front of them when they were absorbing the energy in the crystal. Also, Tang Zheng had been absorbing the energy in Xianyin's crystal from Summer World. However, the effect was not obvious because the energy in the crystal was too much. How stupid. Why do we need to go through so much trouble? The scarlet lunar beast said contemptuously. Suddenly, it attracted everyone's attention. Tang Zheng looked at it curiously and asked, "Is there another way?" The scarlet lunar beast raised its head proudly and said, "Of course there is a way." "Then tell us." "Why should I tell you?" The scarlet lunar beast asked. Tang Zheng was speechless. He rolled his eyes and gave Xiaobai a look. "Since you don't want to cooperate, then let Xiaobai do it." Xiaobai was helpless. He glared at the scarlet lunar beast and said, "Why do you have so many problems? My master asked you to tell us, so hurry up and tell us. You are so annoying." Looking at Xiaobai's impatient face, the scarlet lunar beast was so scared that it trembled and said, "Yes, Your Majesty." Chapter 1153. Xianyin tried her best to resist, but in the end, she had no choice but to surrender. "Everyone, please search." Novel. Tang Zheng glanced at the moon beast, and it had no choice but to withdraw its attack. The red moon beast stomped its feet and glared at Xianyin. Xianyin glanced at it proudly, then stared at Di Zheng and said, "I can answer your question, but I have a condition." Tang Zheng sneered. "Do you think you have the right to ask for a condition?" Xianyin said resolutely, "If you don't agree, even if I die, you won't get an answer from me." Tang Zheng's scorching voice caused Xianyin to stare at him without fear, as if she was a heroic martyr. Suddenly, "Ha ha!" Tang Zheng laughed out loud, his face full of ridicule as he mocked. "Xianyin, don't you think it's meaningless for you to say such harsh words to me? Although I don't know you well, one thing is for sure. You're a person who is afraid of death. How can a person who is afraid of death have the determination and courage to threaten others with death?" The corner of Xianyin's mouth twitched. It seemed that he had hit the nail on the head. This was not nonsense from Tang Zheng. It was based on facts. Xianyin sealed herself in order to survive. She would rather surrender than die in the hands of the Red Moon Beast. All these facts proved that she was a person who cherished her life. Therefore, it was a joke for her to threaten him with death. Tang Zheng saw through it easily. Xianyin did not expect her lie to be seen through so quickly. She looked unnatural and did not know what to do. So, you better cooperate with me. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that I won't kill you. Tang Zheng said fiercely. Xianyin's eyes flickered. You really want to kill me? Tang Zheng sneered and did not answer. However, his meaning was obvious. Xianyin hesitated for a long time. She did not see any sign of retreat in Tang Zheng's eyes. She knew that he was telling the truth. In fact, Tang Zheng did not have the slightest bit of pity for her. Back then, she had bewitched New Era and expelled all the cultivators. How could such a despicable method win his sympathy? Xianyin was helpless and resentfully said, Fine, ask away. I just hope that you won't kill me on account of me telling you everything I know. Then it depends on your attitude. Tang Zheng did not make any promises. Indeed, there was no need for him to make a promise to Xianyin. Seeing this, Red Moon said, Don't be fooled by her. She's not a good person. I know, but we did need her to solve many mysteries for us back then, Tang Zheng replied. He knew very well what kind of person Xianyin was. How could he be so easily fooled by her? Xianyin glared at the Earth Moon Beast, unable to hide the hostility in her eyes, but it was of no use. Let me ask you, why did you come to this world? What is your purpose? Tang Zheng was the first to ask this question. Xianyin said without hesitation, Of course, my purpose in coming to this world is not simple. I have a great mission on my shoulders. What mission? Everyone's spirits shook as they stared at her. Everyone realized that this must be related to some secret of the heavens beyond heaven. Xianyin looked around and said, The heavens beyond heaven is on the verge of collapse for some reason. A large amount of fresh energy is needed to maintain the stability of the heavens beyond heaven. However, His Majesty does not intend to sacrifice His own people, so he thought of using outsiders to do this. Outsiders? Could it be that you have set your sights on this world? Tang Zheng asked with a frown. Xianyin nodded and said matter-of-factly, We have known about this world for a long time. This is the world closest to us. Of course, we would set our sights on this world. Everyone looked at each other. Their world was being targeted. It was as if they were being targeted. It was a very unpleasant feeling. Xianyin seemed to have realized this and quickly tried to salvage the situation. This is His Majesty's idea, not mine. What is Majesty? That traitor is a traitor. What right does he have to be called His Majesty? The Scarlet Lunar Beast seemed to have been provoked by the word His Majesty and complained indignantly. Xianyin smiled bitterly and did not say anything. Tang Zheng waved his hand and signaled the Scarlet Lunar Beast to stop talking about this. Xianyin was very clear about the grudge between the Scarlet Lunar Beast and His Majesty. She avoided the topic and said, His Majesty is doing all of this to maintain the heavens beyond heaven. He is doing this for the sake of everyone's lives. Why is the heavens beyond heaven on the verge of collapse? Empyrean Fairy asked. She caught the key point in Xianyin's words. Xianyin hesitated for a moment and said honestly, the heavens beyond heaven is a big world. However, during the war back then, the foundation of the heavens beyond heaven was shaken. As time passed, the foundation became more and more unstable. In order to stabilize the foundation, he had to make sacrifices. Sacrifice means invading other worlds? Tian Chanzi asked angrily. He was a cultivator and had a close relationship with many of those people back then. Naturally, he was very angry. Xianyin was silent. She did not know what to say. Tang Zheng was relatively calm. He analyzed the meaning of Xianyin's words and asked, You said that you need to inject new energy into the heavens beyond heaven. How are you going to inject new energy into the heavens beyond heaven? Although he asked this question, he already had a certain idea in his heart. He was just asking for confirmation. Although I did not go back, I can imagine that they were captured and sucked dry of their energy before injecting it into the foundation of the heavens beyond heaven. Xianyin said calmly. Tang Zheng had already guessed this before. Now that his guess was confirmed, he was furious. To a cultivator, energy is equivalent to life. If one's energy is no longer there, then they will suffer a fate worse than death. To think that the heavens beyond heaven treats cultivators like this, it is really cruel. Xian Yin's eyelids twitched as she felt Tang Zheng's anger. She said embarrassedly, "This is His Majesty's decision. It has nothing to do with me." "Umph, you're also an accomplice. How can it have nothing to do with you?" Tian Chanzi asked with an unfriendly expression. Xian Yin hesitated. She saw that everyone was glaring at her, as if they wanted to pin all the blame on her. Her heart was in a mess. In the end, she said, "This really has nothing to do with me. I wasn't the only one who came to this world that time. It was a small team, and there were quite a few powerful people among them. However, after entering the spatial door, we encountered a space-time turbulence. In the end, I was the only one who came to this world." After a pause, Xian Yin said desolately, "As for the whereabouts of the others, I have no way of knowing. Therefore, I had no choice but to do this. I also have family and friends in the heavens beyond heaven. For them, I had to do this." Everyone was shocked. They did not expect that there was such a secret. They looked at each other in disbelief. "You came to this world more than one person?" "Yes." Tang Zheng was overwhelmed with shock. If other people also came to this world, then the changes would be even greater than now. It must be known that even Xian Yin could expel the cultivators. Then wouldn't other people come and rule this world? Tang Zheng could not help but feel a little relieved. Fortunately, those people had encountered a space-time turbulence. Otherwise, this world would have been turned upside down. "What is your rank in the team? How is your cultivation compared to the others?" The Empyrean fairy asked directly. This question made Xian Yin stiffen. It was as if someone had caught her tail. She was embarrassed and did not know what to do. Xian Yin hemmed and hawed. She wanted to say something, but stopped. However, when she saw the Empyrean fairy's expression become more and more impatient, she immediately said, "I am not very powerful in the team." "What? You're not very powerful?" Everyone was shocked. Xian Yin's cultivation was very strong compared to them. However, she was not very powerful in the team. Didn't that mean that the others were very powerful? Everyone was worried and could not help but feel a little pessimistic. "Since you're not very powerful, how did you do all this? Driving away the cultivators?" "I met New Era. He was a genius. I hid by his side, gave him advice, searched for her profound martial arts, and spent many years to gain his trust." "Then how did your cultivation become so powerful?" Xian Yin's expression stiffened. She subconsciously looked at the moon beast, and her expression became very unnatural. Tang Zheng's heart moved. "Is it because you ate the red moon beast, Niden?" Xian Yin's expression became more and more unnatural. It was as if a scar had been opened. She could not help but lower her head. Everyone understood tacitly and immediately guessed the truth. Seeing that Xian Yin was right and that Xian Yin was using his wife's inner elixir to cultivate, the red moon beast was both angry and anxious. It roared and bared its teeth, glaring at Xian Yin like a tiger staring at its prey. The look in its eyes was as if it wanted to eat her alive. Xian Yin looked away. She did not want to look at him. "Since your cultivation was not high, how did you use my child to threaten my wife?" The red moon beast gritted his teeth and asked impatiently. Xian Yin said, "Although I can't kill your wife, its whereabouts have already been exposed. I joined forces with New Era and firmly trapped it. I have trapped it for a total of a few months, but it has always refused to submit. Then, something broke the stalemate. We discovered that it was pregnant, so we used the child to threaten it. Although we couldn't kill it, we could kill its child. Regardless of whether it was a human or an exotic beast, their strength would decrease when they were pregnant. How could they be a match for so many people? If it didn't agree, it wouldn't have been able to protect its child from the army." Everyone felt a chill in their hearts. Xian Yin and New Era were really cruel. They actually used an unborn child to threaten a mother. This was too cruel. The Red Moon Beast's eyes were red. It was completely enraged by Xian Yin's description. It wanted to kill her with its claws. The Red Moon Beast agreed to submit. Xian Yin's eyes flashed with a trace of slyness. This was its magnificent feat. It defeated the strong as the weak. Chapter 1154. The Scarlet Lunar Beast almost went crazy and wanted to tear Xian Yin apart. Tang Zheng and the others also felt a chill in their hearts. Xian Yin actually used an unborn child to threaten the Scarlet Lunar Beast. After it submitted to you, what did you ask it to do? Xian Yin replied, the Scarlet Lunar Beast's strength is extraordinary. After it submitted to me, I found out from many sources that there was a dragon in the Southern Sea. So, I bewitched the emperor and started a dragon hunt. That's not right. Tang Zheng quickly shook his head as he found the key point. What's wrong? The others looked at him blankly. For a moment, they did not realize that there was something wrong. Tang Zheng looked at Xian Yin with a burning gaze. Xian Yin also looked at him with a trace of a smile. Her heart was filled with astonishment, as she had already guessed what Tang Zheng was thinking. Didn't you say that you colluded with New Era? How did you bewitch the emperor? Tang Zheng asked curiously. The others suddenly understood, and their eyes lit up. So this was the reason. They also immediately thought of this point and looked at Xian Yin in confusion. Xian Yin chuckled and said, Hee hee, what's so difficult about this? So what if he is the emperor? He is just a fool who has been blinded by power. It is easy to gain his trust. You're trying to make connections with both sides. Tang Zheng said sarcastically. Thank you for the compliment. Xian Yin said shamelessly. You used the 5-clawed golden dragon as bait and bewitched the emperor. You made him collude with the world's cultivators to hunt the 5-clawed golden dragon in the sea. What benefits do you get from this? Benefits? Of course there are. I want to expel the world's cultivators to the human realm beyond heaven. The dragon is an indispensable part. I need the dragon's qi to activate the array. Xian Yin said confidently. Tang Zheng suddenly turned to look at the 5-clawed golden dragon. He saw that it was also puzzled. Obviously, it was not clear about this point. He could not help but be shocked. Xian Yin's various methods had fooled the 5-clawed golden dragon. The 5-clawed golden dragon circled above Xian Yin's head and glared at her. What'd you do to me? Back then, did you feel that your dragon qi was decreasing? Xian Yin was not the slightest bit intimidated by the 5-clawed golden dragon's aura. Instead, she asked with interest. The 5-clawed golden dragon nodded and said fiercely, This is the draconic qi that you sucked away with the help of the Great Formation. That fatuous ruler took advantage of it. Ha! How can something like dragon qi be given to an emperor for free? You think too highly of him. Xian Yin laughed mockingly, her face full of pride. Suddenly, Tang Zheng realized something and asked with a flash of inspiration. You mean that the dragon qi was not sucked away by the emperor? Xian Yin nodded heavily and said without hesitation, Of course, I was only giving him an illusion and a psychological suggestion. How could he possibly absorb the dragon qi? I gathered the dragon qi to activate the final formation and expel all the cultivators in the world. What? The 5-clawed golden dragon was shocked. He had been used without knowing. It was like a loud slap to his face. His face became ferocious. Dragon qi burst forth and a fierce wind blew. Many people had to close their eyes to withstand this terrifying dragon qi. Stop! Tang Zheng hurriedly shouted. The might of the divine dragon was not that simple. Many of the people present did not have a high cultivation base, so they could not resist the might of the divine dragon at all. Many of them panted heavily as their hearts palpitated. The 5-clawed golden dragon was intimidated by Tang Zheng's majesty and reluctantly stopped. He bent down and glared at Xian Yin and said fiercely, You dare to use me, I will not let you off. Xian Yin's expression did not change. I was able to capture you back then, so naturally I am not afraid of you. You dare not be afraid of me. Xian Yin did not move as he silently stared at the 5-clawed golden dragon. One big, one small, two pairs of eyes were close to each other. It was as if there were invisible sparks clashing in midair. Your thoughts are truly meticulous. I'm afraid that the emperor back then would never have thought that he would be used like this by you. Tang Zheng sighed. Haha, of course. That idiot thinks that he is the #1 emperor of all time. In fact, that is just his wishful thinking. Xianyin did not hide his contempt and ridicule for the emperor. If the Emperor Spring knew about this, he would probably be so angry that he would jump out of the coffin. But many years after the death of the emperor, the dynasty was destroyed by the foreign races led by New Era. However, you said earlier that you had colluded with New Era for a long time. Could it be that New Era has lived for so long? Tang Zheng asked curiously. Of course, this is all thanks to me. Although New Era is a genius, he is still a barbarian. Without my help, how could he have cultivated to the peak of his realm? How could he have defeated 1,000 people, defeated the Central Plains dynasty, and occupied this vast world? Qi Yu and the inner demons had always said that there was not much difference between cultivators and martial artists. It was not difficult for them to cultivate to the extreme and live for hundreds or thousands of years. With the help of Xianyin, it was not difficult for New Era to live for a few hundred years. Moreover, the tribe he led back then was only a small tribe at the beginning. If he did not have a few hundred years of development, even with Xianyin's help, it would be impossible for him to chase after the world. Xianyin's move had been played for hundreds of years. The span of time was inconceivable. It was truly not simple. This woman was a person with ambition, strategy, and methods. She could not be underestimated. Tang Zheng immediately felt a chill run down his spine as he stared at Xianyin. Absorbing the dragon qi is a big project that takes hundreds of years, but I have the patience. So when I accumulated enough dragon qi, I encouraged New Era to attack the Central Plains. Not only did we expel the cultivators, we also occupied the Central Plains. This is the whole process. You have already told the truth. You should be satisfied, right? Xianyin asked. Tang Zheng's mind wandered, as if he wanted to distinguish the truth in Xianyin's words. But how could she be completely seen through by a few glances? Therefore, Tang Zheng did not get the answer he wanted. He gradually believed these words. This chain of events was definitely not something that could be fabricated in a short period of time. This was probably the historical truth of that year. Even if there were some lies, there was not much difference. Tang Zheng and Empyrean Fairy looked at each other and saw her nod without a trace. It was obvious that she had thought of the same thing as Tang Zheng and believed Xianyin's words. Red Moon Beast, aren't you bent on finding the murderer of your wife? Isn't it right in front of you? Xianyin suddenly pointed at the 5-clawed golden dragon and said, That year, little Yu Yu's mother died in a great battle with the 5-clawed golden dragon. This was a fact. Seeing that she was trying to sow discord, Tang Zheng flew into a rage. Now that things have come to this, you still dare to sow discord? Do you really want to die? Xianyin smiled embarrassedly and remained silent. Of course she wanted to live. If she did not want to live, she would not have said these things. Her words did have a lot of substance and were also the truth. However, her words had always been 70% true and 30% false. Outsiders could not tell the difference between the truth and lies. She deliberately tried to sow discord between the Red Moon Beast and the 5-clawed golden dragon. Although it did not work for the time being, she found a flash of killing intent in the depths of the Red Moon Beast's eyes. This killing intent was not only directed at her, but also at the 5-clawed golden dragon. This was equivalent to burying a bomb in the Red Moon Beast's heart. As for when it would explode, they would have to wait and see. The 5-clawed golden dragon did not put the Red Moon Beast in his eyes. He stared straight at Xianyin and said, You plotted all of this in order to drive away the cultivators and strengthen the foundation of the realm upon heavens. You really put in a lot of effort. However, you did one thing wrong. You should not have schemed against me. Since you did this, you will die without a doubt. Xianyin knew that Tang Zheng was the one in charge, so she did not care about the 5-clawed golden dragon's anger. Instead, she stared straight at Tang Zheng and said, I have already told you everything. Do you still want to kill me? Tang Zheng did not say a word. He looked at Xian Yin with a complicated expression. The others also looked at Tang Zheng. Yi Dingdang hated evil as if it was her enemy, and seeing her say so many evil things, she immediately said, Tang Zheng, you cannot let her go. The fall of China is related to her. This kind of person, even if you kill her 100 times, it would not be too much. If China had not been invaded by outsiders led by New Era, and if Xian Yin had not caused trouble, the Central Plains dynasty, which was at its peak, would not have fallen, and there would not have been the invasion of various countries in the modern era. Therefore, Xian Yin was indeed a sinner in history with many crimes. Many people nodded in agreement with Yi Dingdong's words. The Empyrean fairy blinked and said, she did not tell us the whole truth. She must be hiding something. I have already told you everything. Xian Yin argued. The Empyrean fairy laughed coldly. I have seen too many women like you. How could you possibly lie to me? You must be hiding something, right? No. Xian Yin's reply was resolute. Do you believe it? The Empyrean fairy asked Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng looked at Xian Yin. Of course, he did not completely believe her. She was definitely hiding something. She came to this world just to expel the cultivators and consolidate the foundation of the sky beyond heaven. Since you have successfully expelled the cultivators to the sky beyond heaven, but you have not returned, could it be that the sky beyond heaven did not organize people to come to this world to find you? This should not be difficult. After all, you have already grasped the ability to open the spatial door. Tang Zheng asked. Xian Yin's eyes flashed with a strange light. She did not expect Tang Zheng to ask such a tricky question. She hesitated, not knowing how to answer. The ability to open the spatial door is not simple. How can it be used just like that? Xian Yin said perfunctorily. You don't mean what you say. Do you think I will believe you? Tang Zheng took a step forward and looked at Xian Yin closely. He was a little taller than Xian Yin and looked down at her with an intimidating aura. There's so many people. Are they not worried about your lives? Tang Zheng asked with a cold smile. The foundation of the sky beyond heaven is not stable. It can only open the spatial door once. If it is stubborn, the space will collapse. That is why they have no way to pick us up. So you are abandoned? Tang Zheng suddenly realized. Chapter 1155. Xian Yin was indeed an abandoned pawn, but she was not simply an abandoned pawn. Her identity, or rather the identity of their team, was very special. They were the children of concubines from the great families of sky beyond heaven, not ordinary people. However, they were still children of concubines and were not valued in their families. Therefore, they were chosen to carry out this mission. There were too many uncertain factors in this mission, and it was too dangerous. Naturally, people of high status would not take the risk, but it was not reliable to leave it to ordinary people. They became the best candidates. They had many concerns in sky beyond heaven. Although they were children of concubines, they still had their own relatives and friends. Therefore, for the lives of these people, they must spare no effort to complete the mission. But they had to make sacrifices at the cost of staying in this world forever. This was the pain in Xian Yin's heart. She did not want to be pierced by Tang Zheng's words. Her mood could be imagined. Seeing Xian Yin's reaction, Tang Zheng knew that he had guessed correctly. This could explain why there were no reinforcements to save her back to sky beyond heaven. She could only stay in this world. Many questions could be answered. She was on good terms with both sides. Not only did she have a good relationship with the Emperor of the Central Plains, but she also secretly supported New Era. No matter who sat on the world, she was the person with the highest power in the world. However, she was good at hiding, and most people did not know of her existence. Tell me about this matter. Tang Zheng urged in an unquestionable tone. Xian Yin's expression changed. In the end, she had no choice but to tell the truth about being an abandoned pawn. When the others heard this, they suddenly understood, but they could not feel the slightest pity for her. Although there was a reason, her actions were really too hateful. I don't have anything to hide anymore. You already know everything. Xian Yin said with a defeated expression. Really? Tang Zheng asked. Xian Yin said decisively. Of course. If you don't believe me, you can kill me. Everyone looked at her without blinking. In the end, they believed her words. This matter was undoubtedly a pain in her heart. If even this point was dug out, there was nothing else to dig out. Suddenly, Tang Zheng changed the topic and asked, "Let me tell you a piece of unfortunate news. Some of the cultivators you banished to the outer sky have returned." Those few that were summoned back using the mountain river blood sacrifice array? Insignificant, Xianyin said jokingly, not putting those people in her eyes at all. Tang Zheng was not surprised that she knew about the mountain and river blood sacrifice array. After all, she was a consecrator of the Azure Dragon Palace Hall. But there's one thing you don't know. The ones that have been summoned back aren't the same few as before. Instead, all the demons have returned. Tang Zheng said. What? Xianyin's expression changed drastically. Of course, she knew what kind of people the demons were. A few hundred years ago, not only did she have dealings with the righteous faction, she even had contact with the devil race. She was very clear on the strength of these people. Then perhaps this world would undergo a world-shaking change. How many people? At least several thousand. How is that possible? Xianyin's expression became more and more serious. Only several thousand cultivators were banished back then. After so many years, how could there be several thousand survivors? In the past, the cultivators who were banished to the outer sky were used as sacrifices to strengthen the foundation of the outer sky. Now that so many of them had returned, didn't it mean that they weren't used as sacrifices to strengthen the foundation of the outer sky? Wouldn't the outer sky be in danger? What exactly happened to them in the outer sky? This matter was related to Xianyin's mission. That was why she had such a big reaction. Hearing this, the others could guess the reason behind it and couldn't help but look at each other. How many cultivators are needed to strengthen the foundation of the outer sky? Tang Zheng asked with a grave expression. Xianyin hesitated for a moment, then said, 80 to 80%. What? You mean to say that almost all the cultivators' lives are needed to strengthen the foundation of the outer sky? Tang Zheng was shocked. His voice raised a few octaves as he asked in a stern voice. The others were also shocked and looked at Xianyin angrily, especially Tian Chanzi. His master was also among them. Didn't that mean that his master would have to be sacrificed as well? Tian Chanzi was so angry that he grabbed Xianyin's clothes and roared, "Venomous woman, what a vicious heart. I'm going to kill you." Xianyin once again succeeded in arousing the killing intent of another person. Xianyin looked at Tian Chanzi indifferently, not saying a word. Tian Chanzi's anger couldn't be quelled, but he didn't really kill Xianyin. Instead, he pushed her away. Xianyin tidied up her clothes. Unfortunately, from the current situation, your plan didn't go as planned. Those cultivators didn't become sacrifices. Tang Zheng shook his head and said sarcastically. Xianyin sighed. This was where she was puzzled. She knew the strength of those cultivators very well. How could they survive in the outer sky? The strength of the outer sky was much higher than those cultivators. It was impossible that they couldn't catch them. Could it be that something unusual happened in the outer sky? She couldn't help but worry. Her mission was not completed. In the past, this was something she had always been proud of. Those who didn't think highly of her in the family would be very surprised and regretful after seeing her success. She enjoyed this feeling very much. But now she found out that it was all an illusion. She failed on the verge of success. Those people in the family would still look down on her. This frustration drove her crazy. Suddenly, she looked up to the sky and screamed, "Why is it like this? Why? Why didn't my efforts succeed? Impossible, it's impossible. You lied to me, didn't you?" Looking at her crazy appearance, which was completely different from before, Tang Zheng didn't pity her at all. He said sarcastically, "Why would I lie to you? Why don't you ask them if I lied to you?" Xianyin rolled her eyes and looked at the others. From their reactions, she immediately got the answer. What Tang Zheng said was the truth. This made it even harder for her to accept. It was as if her spirit had been sucked away. All your efforts have gone to waste. So you've completely failed, Tang Zheng said firmly. The word failed made her tremble. Her face was ashen. Next, tell me more about the situation in the outer sky. Who was the emperor you mentioned? How strong is he? What's the situation in the outer sky? Tang Zheng asked. This question could be asked to Qi Luna, but he didn't ask in a hurry. Qi Luna had been hiding for so many years. He might not know enough about the situation in the outer sky. Xianyin was an insider of the enemy. Naturally, she had a deeper understanding of the situation. By comparing the information of both sides, she could have a clearer understanding. Tang Zheng used to hope to keep a distance from the outer sky. However, after the return of the demon race, he found out that the outer sky's foundation was unstable. In addition to Yin Xingyi's prophecy, he gradually realized that he would have to face the outer sky again in the future. Understanding the situation of the enemy now would do more good than harm in the future. Xianyin turned a deaf ear to him. She was in a daze and didn't answer his question. Tang Zheng frowned and stared at her. He asked, "Tell me everything you know." Xianyin still didn't answer. "What should I do? Don't you know the soul search technique?" Tian Chanzi suggested. Tian Chanzi knew the side effects of the soul search technique. Therefore, he wanted to let Xianyin have a taste of it. Xianyin didn't respond when she heard the words soul search technique. Instead, she laughed like a crazy person. It was very strange. Ha ha ha, I'm so useless. I was useless in the outer sky, and I'm still useless now. Xianyin muttered to herself. He, I'm useless. I'm a useless person. She continued to talk. Hey, who are you? Are you here to laugh at me? Why do you have to laugh at me? Suddenly, she raised her head and stared at everyone. It was as if she had changed into another person. She didn't recognize anyone. What's wrong with her? Could it be that she was too shocked and lost her mind? Everyone had the same thought. Tang Zheng was also shocked. Was Xianyin unable to withstand such a blow? Was she crazy? Was she pretending to be crazy and lying? Tang Zheng sneered. I don't care if you're lying or not. I can use the soul search technique to find out what I want. He didn't want to use the soul search technique because Xianyin was very valuable. She might be useful when dealing with the demon clan. But now that she had lost her mind, there was no need to be merciful. Tang Zheng took a step forward and grabbed her. She looked at Tang Zheng with a silly smile and said, You also want to see me make a fool of myself, right? I won't let you get your way. Then, she hit Tang Zheng with her palm. Tang Zheng easily dodged and grabbed her head with his 5 fingers. He used the soul search technique. Suddenly, scenes appeared in his mind like a movie. His eyes lit up. This was the information he had been dreaming of. Suddenly, these images came to an abrupt end, as if someone had pulled out the power source. No matter how he channeled his power, it was to no avail. It was empty. How could this be? Tang Zheng stared at her in disbelief. The soul search technique had never failed. But this time, it didn't work. Even if he was very smart, he couldn't figure out the reason. What's wrong? The others saw Tang Zheng's reaction and quickly asked. Tang Zheng shook his head and said dejectedly, The soul search technique didn't work. I only got a little bit of information. How could this be? Everyone knew the power of the soul search technique. They had the same question as Tang Zheng. Heaven Monk thought for a moment, then said, The soul-searching technique is a spell of the demon clan. In fact, it is not that powerful in the demon clan. Back then, she had a close relationship with the demon clan. Could it be that she knew the method to break it, so she instinctively resisted it? Is that possible? Tang Zheng asked the Empyrean Fairy. The Empyrean Fairy thought for a moment and nodded. It's not impossible. Chapter 1156. Since Xianyin was able to resist the soul-searching spell, he could not get enough information from her mind. However, Tang Zheng was able to deduce one thing from the fragmented information that he had obtained. She did not tell the truth and hid too much crucial information. Of course, she was not lying. She did tell a lot of things that were true. One of the key points was that they came to this world for more than one purpose. Not only did they come to this world to expel the cultivators and strengthen the foundation of the realm beyond Avalon, they had another purpose that no one knew about. However, the soul-searching spell had lost its effect, and he could not find any relevant information. The others looked at him, and then at the crazy Xianyin. They asked, "What do we do now? Since she is useless, let's kill her." Tian Chanzi said with a murderous look. Red Lunar agreed immediately. "Yes, let's kill her." Looking at the people who wanted to kill Xianyin, Tang Zheng expressed his concern. "She did not tell us everything earlier and hid a lot of crucial information. I found out that she came to this world for more than one purpose. She has another purpose that no one knows about." "What? Another purpose?" Everyone was shocked and stared at Xianyin with burning eyes. They felt that it was inconceivable. She was hiding something when a knife was on her neck and playing tricks. She was really not an ordinary person. "What purpose?" Empyrean Fairy asked coldly. She had to admit that she had underestimated Xianyin. Tang Jing shook his head in disappointment. "I did not find anything either. The soul-searching spell lost its effect too quickly. I only managed to gather a little information." When everyone heard this, they revealed looks of disappointment. They looked at each other in dismay, but in the end, they looked at Tang Zheng, clearly waiting for him to make the decision. Tang Zheng pondered for a while and said, "I think we should not kill her for now. She is an important clue. No matter if she is really crazy or just pretending to be crazy, if we did not kill her, we might have a chance to get more information about the realm beyond Avalon from her mind. What do you think?" The others looked at each other and hesitated. Many of them wanted to kill Xianyin as she was a ticking time bomb. What if she exploded in the future? In addition, she deserved it. She had harmed so many people in the past. Even death could not wipe out her crimes. However, some people also agreed with Tang Zheng's words. If they stayed, they might have unexpected gains in the future. This was a crossroad, and it was difficult to make a choice. Tian Chanzi and Empyrean Fairy looked at each other. Although Tian Chanzi insisted on killing Xianyin, he also understood that Tang Zheng's words were not without reason. In the end, he compromised and said, "You decide for yourself." The elders and the others also said, "Lord Envoy, we will listen to you." Red Moon wanted to object, but when it looked at Xiao Bai, it swallowed its words. "I'll spare her life, but I won't let her harm others. I'll take her into Sumeru world." The Sumeru heavens was different from ordinary Sumeru pouches. It could contain life forms. If Xianyin was trapped within the Sumeru heavens, she wouldn't be able to cause any big waves. Tang Zheng waved his hand, and the Sumeru heavens flashed. Xianyin disappeared and was taken into the Sumeru heavens. Although Red Moon was unwilling, it didn't dare to say anything. Tang Zheng's gaze turned to the Scarlet Moon Beast and said, "Why don't you tell me what you know about the sky beyond heaven?" Just now, Red Moon and Xianyin had only mentioned a little. The more detailed information was, the more curious it would be. Tell me, Xiao Bai urged impatiently. Red Moon nodded its head and started to tell him everything. The realm beyond heaven had a long history. It was not inferior to this world. As for the structure of the world, it was very different from this world. It was a world where only the strong were respected. It was more cruel and bloody. The realm beyond heaven was a paradise for cultivators. However, not everyone was a cultivator. Just like this world, there were ordinary people too. There were many races in the realm beyond heaven. However, the two largest races were the beasts and the humans. The beasts were united and powerful, while the humans were cunning. In the beginning, the beasts ruled the realm beyond heaven for tens of thousands of years. Generations after generations, the power of the realm beyond heaven became stronger and stronger. Although the humans were ruled by the beasts, they lived in peace and contentment. This was especially so for the ordinary humans. These humans were not cultivators, but ordinary people. When the beasts ruled the world, there were many human generals who held high positions under them. Later on, one of the humans had a rebellious heart. He secretly contacted the humans who had ulterior motives. In the end, when the former king was unprepared, he severely injured him and started a rebellion. Since then, an earth-shattering war broke out between the two sides. There were countless casualties, and blood flowed like rivers. The beasts were hunted down one by one while the humans rose to power. In the end, the former king was defeated and fled. The traitor ascended the throne and continued to chase after us. In order to cover our escape, the former king forcefully opened a spatial door. However, he did not escape. The realm beyond heaven was his territory. Even if he died in battle, he would die on this land. In the end, he covered his queen and escaped into the spatial door. After fighting for more than 10 days, he could not withstand the continuous attacks and died. When the crowd heard this magnificent history, although they did not witness it with their own eyes, they were still shocked. They were amazed by the extraordinary history of the realm beyond heaven. There were all kinds of strange things in this world. In this world, there were beasts who cultivated, but they were not strong enough. They had always been ruled by the humans. Who would have thought that the realm beyond heaven was ruled by the beasts for tens of thousands of years? It was unbelievable. Everyone could not help but look at Xiaobai. Its ancestor ruled the realm beyond heaven for so many years. It was amazing. As a descendant of the imperial family, Xiaobai was naturally extraordinary. It was no wonder that no one could recognize its origin. When it faced the five-clawed golden dragon, although its strength was not as strong as the five-clawed golden dragon, it was not afraid at all. The pride that came from its bones was moving and awe-inspiring. The Scarlet Moon Beast looked at Xiaobai deeply. Its eyes were filled with respect. Then, the Scarlet Moon Beast continued. After the humans took over the realm beyond heaven, they killed off the elites of the beasts and enslaved the weaker beasts. Many people thought that after the humans were united, all of the humans would rise. However, it was just wishful thinking. The weak humans did not rise. In fact, their living environment was worse than before. The law of the jungle, where the strong ruled, was used to its fullest. Many ordinary people were trampled on by the strong cultivators. Their lives were treated like grass, and no one was there to uphold justice. The realm beyond heaven was in a mess. Under the oppressive policies of the humans, everyone kept quiet and did not dare to resist. There was only one way out for them to resist, and that was death. Some kind-hearted people stood up to resist and try to uphold justice. However, they were all killed by His Majesty. After that, this trend was completely extinguished. The crowd looked at each other, and their expressions became unnatural. They thought that it was shocking enough that the beasts ruled the world. Now that the humans had risen, they felt ashamed that the humans behaved in such a despicable manner. The Scarlet Moon Beast glanced at the crowd and said, "In the realm beyond heaven, those traitorous humans are truly shameless. Not only did they kill the beasts, but they also did not spare their own kind. Anyone who dared to resist them would only end up dead." The crowd remained silent. As humans, they knew that the humans were scheming and deceitful. They even knew their shortcomings and cruelty. They did not think that the Scarlet Moon Beast was exaggerating. Although the humans in this world had been promoting their good side, where there was light, there would be darkness. This was unavoidable. They did not deny that there were many problems in the humans. Seeing that the crowd did not react, the Scarlet Moon Beast seemed to be surprised. These people were very different from the humans that it knew. It did not fly into a rage, nor did it scold them loudly. The Scarlet Moon Beast took a deep breath and digested this unusual scene. It continued, "The beasts have been hiding everywhere, and it's very difficult for them to survive. In fact, many people are looking forward to your Majesty's return to the realm beyond heaven and lead us to fight back. We'll defeat that incapable emperor and take back everything that belongs to us." The Scarlet Moon Beast was excited. Its eyes were shining as it stared at Xiaobai. Although Xiaobai heard what it said, its reaction was very calm. Perhaps it was not wise enough to understand such complicated and profound things. Gratitude, hatred, love, and the world were too far away for it. It was like a child listening to the Scarlet Moon Beast talk about these things, as if it was listening to a fairy tale. Looking at Xiaobai's reaction, the Scarlet Moon Beast could not help but feel sad. It could not hide its disappointment. Xiaobai was its only hope, but it reacted in such a manner. Although it respected Xiao Bai very much, it was still sad. Looking at Xiao Bai's innocent look, Tang Zheng asked the Scarlet Moon Beast, "Are you really confident?" The Scarlet Moon Beast nodded heavily without hesitation. "Of course, I'm confident. Although your majesty is still young, it's the inheritor of the imperial bloodline. Once your majesty awakens in the future, you'll have unprecedented power. That traitor will definitely be defeated." Although Tang Zheng was very close to Xiao Bai, he was not as optimistic as the Scarlet Moon Beast. Although he did not know much about the realm beyond heaven, he could tell that the traitor was very powerful from the Scarlet Moon Beast's description. Even the late emperor was no match for it. He was chased off the throne and was hunted down like a stray dog. How could a weak Xiao Bai be a match for that traitor? Perhaps it was the Scarlet Moon Beast's wishful thinking. Tang Zheng did not say these words out loud as he did not want to dampen the Scarlet Moon Beast's enthusiasm. The Empyrean Fairy and Tian Chanzi shared the same opinion as Tang Zheng. They had lived for many years and were very knowledgeable. They knew better than anyone else how difficult it was to rule an entire world. In the long history of this world, there were only a few people who could do it. Moreover, there were many powerhouses in the realm beyond heaven. The situation was completely different. Back then, I encountered the space door by chance. I knew it was fate that allowed me to meet your majesty and fight our way back to the realm beyond heaven. We'll take back the glory that belongs to us. The Scarlet Moon Beast was very emotional as it talked nonstop. P.S. Once again, please follow my official WeChat account, Tang Xiao. Just search for this account on WeChat. I'll post exclusive content and updates on my official account every day. Thank you. Chapter 1157. Little White looked at the excited Scarlet Lunar Beast and poured a bucket of cold water over its head, saying, "I will not go to the sky beyond heaven. How can that place be better than here? I only want to stay by Master's side forever." The Red Lunar Beast's heart sank. It was as if he had fallen from the sky into a bottomless abyss. He tried his best to persuade. "Your Majesty, this is your mission. As a member of the royal family, this is your career." Little White curled its lips. It did not put the so-called mission and career in its eyes. It shook its head and wagged its tail as it walked to Tang Zheng's feet, rubbed against his leg, and lightly jumped onto Tang Zheng's shoulder. Red Lunar Beast was stunned. He thought that he was about to succeed, but he did not expect this to happen. This was like a person who was walking in the desert and saw a water source when he was on the verge of death. When he finally got closer, he realized that it was just a mirage. Tang Zheng could understand Red Lunar Beast. As for the great career that he described, Tang Zheng did not agree. He advised, "Don't be too hasty. We can discuss this in the future." Red Lunar Beast hesitated for a long time. In the end, he had no choice but to accept this reality. He nodded as if he had nothing left to live for. His enthusiasm disappeared in an instant. He looked at Tang Zheng with a complicated gaze. What kind of magic did this person have to make his majesty follow him so wholeheartedly? He was a human. How could his majesty follow a human? If Wang Quan knew about this, he would not be able to rest in peace. But now that he was under the roof, he could not voice out his grievances. He could only keep it in his stomach. "Woo-woo!" Little Yu suddenly cried out a few times. She went to Red Lunar Beast's feet and rubbed her little head against him. Red Lunar Beast's depressed expression suddenly changed into a gentle and loving look. He reached out his claws and gently stroked Yu's head. He said, "Good child, I have made you suffer in the past. I will make it up to you in the future." Little Yu understood his words. Her eyes became lively and light. What about my business?" The five-clawed golden dragon finally spoke with dissatisfaction. Not only did the five-clawed golden dragon hate the Scarlet Lunar Beast, but it also hated Xianin. Now that it couldn't do anything to these two opponents, its mood was extremely low. Tang Zheng looked at it calmly and asked, "Do you have any objections to my arrangement?" "Of course I do. What's the point of keeping these guys alive? They're all scourges." The five-clawed golden dragon said indignantly, "Hee hee, It seems that you want to make a decision for me? Tang Jung chuckled. The five-clawed golden dragon's heartstrings trembled as it looked at Tang Jung with a complicated expression. It had been branded with a soul mark, so if it dared to resist Tang Jung, it would only experience how the word death was written. Come back. Tang Jung stretched out his arm. The five-clawed golden dragon had no choice but to wave its tail. With a flash of golden light, it turned back into a tattoo and disappeared from Tang Jung's arm. Now that the crimson lunar beast had escaped, many of his questions had been answered. Everyone had witnessed everything with their own eyes and felt that this trip was worth it. The situation in the capital city was unpredictable. Tang Jung did not stay for long. Instead, he brought a group of people back to the capital city through the teleportation portal. However, there was an additional crimson lunar beast with him. The two crimson lunar beasts, one big and one small, walked in the backyard of the villa. The crimson lunar beast wagged its tail and looked around curiously. Back then, when it came to this world through the teleportation portal, it had been sealed in a crystal. After it was discovered by the Swedish royal family, it had been hiding in the underground laboratory. It was dark and knew very little about the outside world. Therefore, when it saw the true face of this world, it could not help but widen its eyes. It was like Granny Lou who had just entered the Grandview Garden. Especially the skyscrapers and all kinds of technological products, it was too much for its eyes to take in. The Outland was similar to the ancient Huaxia, so there were no technological products. It was indeed an eye-opener for the crimson lunar beast. Comparing it with the hometown and its memory, it could not help but become more curious about this world. Don't go too far. Otherwise, if you are seen by strangers, it will cause unnecessary trouble. Tang Jung reminded it. The crimson lunar beast was not in a hurry to leave and see the wonders of this world. Instead, it followed Tang Jung and said, I have something to talk to you about. Tang Jung frowned as he looked at it and nodded thoughtfully. Come with me. Xiaobai rode on little Yu Yu and ran away. The two little fellows went to play happily. Even if the sky fell, it was a small matter to them. The others either went back to their rooms or gathered in groups of 3 or 5 to discuss what they had seen and heard today. The crimson lunar beast followed Tang Jung to his room. It looked at him and said, I want to know about Her Majesty. The crimson lunar beast did not know many things about Xiaobai. It did not even know about the queen's situation after she came to this world. Naturally, it could not help but be curious. Tang Jung looked at it indifferently. He did not hide anything and told it everything he knew. The crimson lunar beast was surprised and said, You are saying that the queen became the holy beast of the sorcerer tribe. Later on, by chance, you and Her Majesty form an unbreakable bond? You have summed it up well. Tang Jung said, How did the queen become the holy beast of the sorcerer tribe? This part of history is too long ago. I can't do anything about it. Tang Jung shrugged. Perhaps only Tian Chanzi could explain this matter. The crimson lunar beast could not hide its disappointment and said, The queen was wronged. She had to become the holy beast. It was an insult to the queen. The crimson lunar beast was very angry about being called a holy beast. Although it was called a holy beast, it was still under the rule of humans. How could it be compared to the status of a holy beast? It must be the humans who threatened the queen. At that time, Her Majesty was in the queen's stomach. It was just like how Xian Yin threatened my wife. The crimson lunar beast guessed angrily. Tang Jung laughed and said, What happened back then, other than the people involved, no one can say for sure. I know that you are biased against humans, but we are different. We are not your enemies. Moreover, it is our credit that you were able to escape and see the light of day again. I know. That is why I am very grateful that you saved me. I'm even more grateful that you saved Her Majesty. You don't have to thank me for the matter between me and Xiaobai. My relationship with it is not something you can understand. It is like my family, a part of this family. I should do anything for it. You don't have to thank me. Tang Jung said simply. The crimson lunar beast looked at Tang Jung with a complicated expression. In the end, it nodded and said, I know, but I want to ask you for a favor. I want to teach Her Majesty personally. Please approve. No. Tang Zheng rejected without thinking. Why? The crimson lunar beast stared at him. I know your intentions. You want to instill hatred into it, but since it's my family, I have to be responsible for it. Although it's quite powerful and has an extraordinary identity, it's still a child. It shouldn't have come into contact with hatred. This is its destiny. The crimson lunar beast insisted. Hee, that is just your wishful thinking. What destiny? It is all a lie. Its destiny should be decided by itself. It should not be decided by others. Do you understand? Tang Zheng's eyes flashed as he said aggressively. The crimson lunar beast's eyes were flickering. It stared at Tang Zheng as if it was trying to find a flaw in him. However, in the end, it had to give up on this idea. There was no turning back. Tang Zheng had made up his mind. Indeed, he had already made up his mind. The enmity between the country and the family was a matter of the previous generation. It was a passing cloud. First and foremost, Little White was his family. Then, she was the so-called descendant of the heavens beyond heaven's imperial family. He could only wait for it to grow up and make its own decision. Then, everything would be logical. Whether it chose to return to the heavens beyond heaven for revenge or to stay in this world, Tang Zheng would support it without hesitation. He would be its strongest support. If it went back, even if Tang Zheng was not strong enough, he would not back down. However, if it did not want to go back, no matter who it was, whether it was the Crimson Lunar Beast or someone else, Tang Zheng would not sit back and do nothing. You are very smart and should be able to understand what I mean. Also, it was not easy for you to be united with your son. You should first enjoy this kind of life and not have any other messy thoughts. What do you think? Their eyes met. The Crimson Lunar Beast did not dare to look into Tang Zheng's eyes. In the end, it said bitterly, I understand. However, it did not give up on its original idea. Although I can't teach His Majesty openly, you can't stop me from interacting with His Majesty. His Majesty will understand the responsibility and destiny on his shoulders. The Crimson Lunar Beast thought quietly. Seeing that the Crimson Lunar Beast had left, Tang Zheng leaned against the back of the chair and closed his eyes. He rubbed his temples and immersed his mind into Sumeru heaven. Xian Yin was still crazy. There was no change. He shook his head helplessly. I didn't expect the heavens beyond heaven to be such a world. Back then, many people went to the heavens beyond heaven from the peak of Mount Buzhou. However, they did not send back any clues or news. Now, you have coincidentally found out about the heavens beyond heaven. The inner demons suddenly said. Tang Zheng smiled faintly and said, maybe this is the right time. Now, it seems that there must be a space door at the peak of Mount Buzhou that can connect the two worlds. When the 100 Faces star crashed into Mount Buzhou, it seemed like he was venting his anger and made many people angry. Now, it seems that he really did a good thing. Otherwise, the heavens beyond heaven would have contacted our world long ago. The 100 Faces star had delayed all of this for tens of thousands of years. The inner demon sighed. He could not help but sigh when he recalled the events that happened long ago. It's a pity that regardless of the significance of the 100 Change Star Sovereign's actions back then, he has sacrificed so many lives to summon back the demon clan. His sins far outweigh his merits. So, in the end, he and we are not the same kind of people. Tang Zheng was filled with righteous indignation and said unquestionably. The inner demons did not question his words. After pondering for a while, they said, don't blame me for not reminding you. There is one thing that you must do right now. Chapter 1159. Xiao Xiaoling was not afraid of death. He found a real culprit. Even if there was a mountain of knives and a sea of fire, he would cross it. DT. His hand holding the sword did not tremble at all. It was as firm as his heart. Song Yu's eyes flashed with a cold light. Xiao Xiaoling's words poked at his sore spot. Killing the sword god was one of his biggest secrets, and no one else knew about it. Of course, he did not think that Xiao Xiaoling knew about it. However, this accusation made him involuntarily think of his own crimes. Xiao Xiaoling really did not know that Song Yu killed the sword god. His so-called deceiving the sword god referred to him killing Sword San, which was told to him by Tang Zheng. In addition, Xiao Xiaoling would never believe that the sword god would pass the sword pavilion to him. There must be something fishy about it. Song Yu certainly did not know this, but he was also a little flustered in his heart. He was afraid that his numerous crimes would be known by the world. Of course, he wanted to kill Xiao Xiaoling. His eyes flashed with killing intent, and he said coldly, "How long can I hold on? Kill him." The sword slave's attack suddenly became sharper and sharper. The sword light filled the sky and shrouded Xiao Xiaoling from all directions. Whoosh! Suddenly, Xiao Xiaoling made his move. The sword light fell from the sky, as if a red sun had fallen from the Milky Way above the ninth heaven. It was even more dazzling than the light cast from the sky. It exuded a terrifying aura. Ninth heaven galaxy fall sword technique. Xiao Xiaoling's face finally had a trace of fluctuation. This sword technique was the sword god's consummate skill. He did not expect that it would fall on Song Yu, a deceiving fellow. This was an insult to the sword god. Xiao Xiaoling's heart was filled with anger, and his eyes turned blood red. He stared at Song Yu hatefully and said, "You are tarnishing the ninth heaven galaxy fall sword technique." Song Yu sneered and said, "Tarnishing it? I'm bringing glory to master. In my hands, this sword technique will explode with even greater power and shine even more brilliantly." Shameless. Xiao Xiaoling roared hysterically, but to no avail. He could only watch the light fall. Xiao Xiaoling did not sit still and wait for death. The soft sword in his hand shook, like a snake spitting out its tongue, nimbly and craftily welcomed Song Yu's sword. Both of their sword techniques were inherited from the sword god. Although they were different sword techniques, they were similar in many ways. But in terms of power, the ninth heaven galaxy fall sword technique was undoubtedly superior. With a crisp sound, Xiao Xiaoling's sword completed the shape of a full moon, as if it was about to break. He gritted his teeth, and the arm holding the sword trembled slightly. However, he did not give up and roared. Clang! The soft sword bounced back like an arrow shot from an iron bow. Song Yu was the arrow that bounced back. However, Song Yu did not fall out completely. Instead, she rose into the air and suspended high above Xiao Xiaoling. After a few seconds, the sword in her hand lit up again. Ninth heaven galaxy fall. This sword was even more powerful, as if it was exuding the aura of death. Xiao Xiaoling's eyelids twitched, but he also urged all his power to resist with his sword. Kacha! The soft sword broke. Song Yu's arm moved, and the sharp sword drove straight in, from top to bottom, piercing his shoulder and almost piercing his heart. Blood immediately came out. This scene made his heart sway. This was the essence of the ninth heaven galaxy fall sword technique. They had seen the sword god perform it before. Now that they saw this scene again, they were shocked. Song Yu was also very satisfied with her sword. Since he escaped from the sword pavilion, he had been practicing the ninth heaven galaxy fall sword technique hard. His talent and perception in the way of the sword were really good. Otherwise, he would not have been accepted as a disciple by the sword god. He finally understood the essence of the ninth heaven galaxy fall sword technique little by little, and his sword technique advanced by leaps and bounds. The sword technique created by the sword god was not too complicated, but there were many subtle things in it. Unless one had excellent talent, it was absolutely impossible to really learn the essence of it by hard work. Xiaolong's life was at stake. Song Yu's mouth revealed a victorious smile and said, "You are just an abandoned disciple of the sword pavilion. What qualifications do you have to challenge me? Go to hell." With a shake of his arm, the long sword changed direction, and the tip of the sword pierced Xiao Xiaoling's heart. The long sword was originally pierced in Xiao Xiaoling's shoulder. With this slight change in direction, even Xiao Xiaoling could not save himself. Everyone thought that Xiao Xiaoling was going to die. The expression in the eyes of the sword slave also changed a lot. Perhaps some people still had some small thoughts in their hearts, but this scene completely cut off those small thoughts. "Master, this disciple is useless. I was unable to eradicate this scum of the sect. Xiao Xiaoling was desperate. His face was ashen. He had died once. He was stabbed in the heart by Tang Zheng. Later, Tang Zheng tried his best to save him, gave him a second chance to live, and let him pledge allegiance to him. Tang Zheng, I failed to complete the task you gave me. I will return this life to you. He almost closed his eyes. Suddenly a bright light shone in his eyes. This bright light was incomparably bright. It was the sword light. He was very familiar with it and would never mistake it. The sword light arrived in the blink of an eye. He had never had such a fast sword. It was even faster than his master's sword. His heart suddenly jumped. He suddenly noticed a familiar aura. This sword light was too familiar. He would never forget it, because this was Tang Zheng's sword light. Song Yu also abruptly raised his head, noticing this sword light. It was not good. This thought immediately came to his mind, but the sword in his hand did not stop for half a moment. But it was still a step too late. The sword light fiercely chopped his sword. Puff! The long sword was pulled out from Xiao Xiaoling's shoulder and flew out. Song Yu flew away with the long sword. The power of this sword was so great that Song Yu's arm kept trembling. He was aghast. The sword in his hand was suspended above Xiao Xiaoling's head. War Soul's sword. He recognized it at a glance. It was all too familiar to him. His pupils suddenly shrank as he looked into the distance. Sure enough, a familiar figure came walking on the wind, passed through the sword slave's encirclement, and landed beside Xiao Xiaoling. Are you okay? Tang Zheng looked at Xiao Xiaoling's wound and asked. Xiao Xiaoling's desperate heart was rekindled with the fire of hope. He said, I won't die. He was an assassin. His vitality was far more tenacious than ordinary people. This kind of injury would not kill him. Tang Zheng nodded and said, well done. You finally found Song Yu. After Song Yu escaped from the sword pavilion, it was like a clay ox entering the sea. He was more secretive than Granny Li and Lord Ji Wuxiang. It was as if he had evaporated from the world. Tang Zheng also did not place too much attention on Song Yu. But after all, he was a big worry in his heart, a potential dangerous factor. How could he allow him to grow stronger? Therefore, when this task was given to Xiao Xiaoling, he was just trying it out. Unexpectedly, Xiao Xiaoling completed it very well. It didn't take much time for Song Yu to surface. It was just that this place made him very curious. How could the two sides meet here at the Tree of Life? Song Yu's eyelids twitched wildly, and he was on guard. He was really frightened by this person, but ever since he comprehended the essence of the Nine Heavens Milky Way fall sword technique, his former confidence had returned. Therefore, at this moment, although his heart was beating like a drum, he did not run away. Song Yu, you really hid well. I worked hard and let Xiao Xiaoling take action to find you. Tang Zheng said lightly, with a smile that was not a smile. Song Yu's heart was a little creepy. He forced himself to be spirited, coldly snorted, and said unceremoniously, it turns out that this abandoned disciple of the Sword Pavilion surrendered to you. No wonder he was expelled from the sect by Master. He was born with a rebellious bone behind his head. He was an ungrateful wretch who recognized a thief as his father. Xiao Xiaoling, you are the one who has tarnished Master and the Sword Pavilion. You are talking nonsense. Xiao Xiaoling's heart seemed to have been poked with countless holes, and blood flowed. Song Yu was proud. His eloquence was much better than Xiao Xiaoling's. 10 Xiao Xiaolings could not speak against him. Xiao Xiaoling's chest heaved up and down. He was flustered and exasperated, and the blood from his wound flowed faster. Calm down. You are an assassin. How can you be angered by these few words? Tang Zheng said unhappily. His fingers quickly pointed at his wound a few times, and the gurgling blood stopped. Your mission has been completed. Let me do the rest. After Tang Zheng finished speaking, he couldn't help but remember the scene when he first saw him. At that time, he met Song Yu for the first time in Ordinary Balance's courtyard. At that time, he was an ordinary high school student unremarkable. Song Yu was the young master of the Song family. He was the focus of attention and honor. One was on the ground, the other was in the sky. There was a world of difference. In the eyes of many people, Perhaps Tang Zheng could not reach the level of Song Yu even if he worked hard for a lifetime, because no one had ever had such an unrealistic and absurd idea. Only a few years had passed. Now that the two sides were facing each other again, everything was reversed. The Song family was already old history. Although Song Yu had incorporated the Sword Pavilion, he was still a stray dog. Tang Zheng had become a new star in the eyes of everyone. No one dared to underestimate him. The word, not what it used to be, could not be more appropriate. Song Yu also thought of these scenes. He couldn't help but feel bitter in his heart. The corner of his mouth twitched a few times as he stared at Tang Zheng. At this time, the sound of footsteps gradually approached. Tian Chanzi, Yi Dingdang, and Feng Shishir also caught up. The sword slaves naturally could not stop them. Heaven Monk brought the two of them in as if he had entered a place with no one around and strolled in leisurely. Tian Chanzi was not surprised. In his eyes, Song Yu was a small character that couldn't be any smaller. He couldn't arouse his interest at all. Yi Dingdang was different. She couldn't believe it and exclaimed, "Why is it you?" She had a deep relationship with Song Yu and had almost become his fiancée. If she hadn't pushed out Tang Zheng as a shield and the subsequent unexpected events, who knew what would have happened? Song Yu sneered at Dingdang. His eyes were burning with a raging fire. The fall of the Song family was ultimately related to Yi Dingdang. She was one of the main culprits. Yi Dingdang, it's actually you. Song Yu gnashed his teeth. Chapter 1160. Song Yu and Yi Dingdang stared at each other, their eyes clashing in midair. Yi Dingdang did not have the slightest good impression of Song Yu. When they first met, it was like this, later on, and now it was also like this. Yi Dingdang, you woman, you ruined my family. I will definitely kill you. Song Yu said fiercely. Yi Dingdang snorted disapprovingly and said, "You keep saying that I am the one who harmed you, but you really know how to quibble. It is clear that you brought this upon yourself. If you did not insist on going against Tang Zheng and even try to harm him, how could you have fallen to this state today?" With Song Yu's paranoid personality, how could she listen to these words? She heavily growled and said, "It's just flowery words." Tang Zheng could not bear to watch any longer and said, "Dingdang, don't lower yourself to his level. This person has already gone completely crazy and lives in his own world. Other than himself, everyone else is his enemy." After failing, he did not find a reason for his failure and instead blamed it on others. He is a complete loser. What large family's young master? That is just a layer of beautiful outer clothing that can be torn apart with a single tear. Yi Dingdang nodded. She looked at Tang Zheng with eyes full of tenderness and sweetness. Because from Song Yu's situation, Tang Zheng's excellence and extraordinariness were even more apparent. "Tang Zheng, you don't have the qualifications to make irresponsible remarks to me." Song Yu shouted at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng remained unmoved. He looked at the other sword slaves and said, "You are really blind to listen to him. You must know that Jian Shan died at the hands of his Song family. Do you also want to follow in his footsteps?" Xiao Xiaoling had already said these words, so the sword slaves were indifferent. Tang Zheng shook his head. He didn't have any methods to deal with this group of stubborn sword servants, yet he didn't care. In the past, perhaps sword servants were a force that couldn't be underestimated. But now, the strength of sword servants was too low, and they wouldn't be of much use in future confrontations or battles. Seeing this, Song Yu sneered. "Tang Zheng, you still want to bewitch my people? Don't waste your energy." Tang Zheng smiled, then changed the topic and asked, "Song Yu, why did you bring so many people here?" "Yes, he must have a plan. I have tracked them all the way here. He must be thinking of something bad." Xiao Xiao's heart moved, and he quickly said. Tang Zheng nodded his head. He also found this suspicious point, which was why he asked this question. A trace of unnaturalness flashed across Song Yu's face. She laughed and deliberately covered it up. "Ha ha ha! Why should I tell you about my affairs?" Tang Zheng raised his head and glanced at the tree of life that was close at hand. His voice became dignified as he said, "You came for it, right?" Song Yu's eyes jumped a few times, and she said, "I don't know what you're talking about. The Tree of Life may be mysterious to ordinary people, and they don't know its magical aspects. But for the young master of the Song family, I'm afraid this won't be difficult for you. Of course, you know the extraordinary aspects of the Tree of Life." Tang Zheng sighed. Song Yu's face stiffened. She thought that her purpose was very hidden, but it was still exposed by Tang Zheng's words. Song Yu's purpose for coming here was indeed not simple. She had heard the sword god mention the extraordinary aspects of the Tree of Life. After all, ever since the Tree of Life appeared, the Azure Dragon Hall had never stopped investigating and collecting information about it. The leader of the Dragon Group, Xing Feng's research on the Tree of Life seemed to be hidden, but it did not escape the Azure Dragon Hall's intelligence system. The sword god had once mentioned the Tree of Life by chance, and Sonyu had secretly remembered it, but she had never had the chance to study it in detail. Later on, after she came out of the sword world, she focused on increasing her cultivation. Apart from comprehending the Nine Heavens Galaxy Fall sword art, she finally found another shortcut, and that was the Tree of Life. It was said that the sap of the Tree of Life was like nectar. Not only could it prolong one's life, but it could also rapidly increase one's cultivation. Back then, Xing Feng had thought of this. However, it was ruined by Tang Zheng, and he even paid with his life, failing on the verge of success. Song Yu understood that if she wanted to become strong enough to defeat Tang Zheng, this was the only path she could take. Moreover, the Tree of Life had always been unguarded, so it was the best time for her to make a move. He led the sword slaves to the front of the Tree of Life, but was blocked by an invisible array. Before, he had never been here, so he didn't know much about the Tree of Life and its surroundings. Now, looking at the Tree of Life in front of him, he couldn't do anything about it. He was really angry and anxious. But before he could think of a way to break it, Xiao Xiaoling chased him all the way. At this moment, seeing Tang Zheng and the others rushing over, although Song Yu's heart was in a mess, she didn't show it. Instead, she was calm and composed, as if victory was in her grasp. This was to stabilize the morale of the army. Otherwise, the sword slaves would have scattered and fled. He understood that this time he was one step slower. Tang Zheng might have gotten the information about Xiao Xiaoling, so he chased after him. Suddenly, he looked at Xiao Xiaoling with a murderous gaze. He really regretted that he didn't have time to kill him. He didn't know that Tang Zheng didn't come here because of Xiao Xiaoling. All this was just a coincidence. Heaven's will. Looking at Song Yu's reaction, Tang Zheng knew that he had guessed right. If it weren't for the inner demons reminding him, he wouldn't have been able to save Xiao Xiaoling, let alone stop the other party's actions. Although he was very confident in his array, it was not a good thing to be coveted by Song Yu. In case something went wrong and the Tree of Life was bad, then it would be too late for him to regret it. Song Yu, no matter what your goal is, let me tell you, it's just an illusion, a beautiful wish of yours. Last time I let you escape, but this time you have no way to escape. Tang Zheng said with a murderous look. Song Yu's heart jumped. This was a boundless desert, a flat expanse of land that stretched as far as the eye could see. There was simply no place to hide, so naturally, there was also no place to escape. Don't be too confident. You think you can cover the sky with one hand. Song Yu retorted. Her face was cold. She waved her hand and ordered, "Kill them." The sword slaves roared and waved their swords. The sword light reflected a dazzling light and flew towards several people. "I'll meet them." Yi Dingdang was eager to give a try. She jumped up to meet them. "I'll come too." Fang Shishir was ready to move. With a whoosh, she rushed into the battle. Their cultivation was higher than these sword slaves. They hadn't fought for a long time. Their fighting spirit had long been restless. Now that they could finally satisfy their cravings, how could they miss this great opportunity? Tang Zheng wasn't worried about the two. His eyes were firmly locked on Song Yu. Song Yu hid behind the sword slaves. Separated by the crowd, she and Tang Zheng looked at each other. She could clearly see the ridicule in Tang Zheng's eyes. Whoosh! Song Yu turned around and fled. She didn't hesitate at all. She was faster than a rabbit. Tang Zheng was stunned for a moment. He never imagined that Song Yu would be so straightforward. She didn't even try to be perfunctory and fled just like that. He couldn't help but admire the other party's shamelessness, as this was really his style. Just like back then, when he bewitched others to snipe Tang Zheng, he brought a group of trusted aides and escaped without a trace. This time, she didn't even want her confidants. In order to survive, she left first. However, this time wasn't like the last time. Tang Zheng didn't even see her figure, so she was able to escape. This time, she was right under his nose. If he still allowed her to escape, then Tang Zheng wouldn't be able to show her face anymore. Whoosh! Tang Zheng flew up and stepped on the heads of a few sword slaves. Like a bird, he lightly flew through the crowd and descended behind Song Yu. Song Yu's speed was extremely fast, and when he heard the movement behind him, he was so scared that his heart trembled. He turned his head to look, only to discover that Tang Zheng was right behind him. He was so scared that his whole body trembled, and the long sword in his hand swung towards Tang Zheng. If you had the strength of the sword god, then you might have a chance. But you're too weak. Although you've cultivated the ninth heaven Milky Way, fall sword art, you're still unable to withstand a single blow. Tang Zheng said in disdain. The sword god was a martial king. Even now, he wasn't a match for Tang Zheng, let alone Song Yu. The sword fell from the sky. It was like a scorching sun. It shone with the sunlight, making people's eyes hurt. However, Tang Zheng didn't close his eyes. There wasn't even the slightest fluctuation in his gaze. He coldly looked at the sword. Clang! Suddenly, the sword stopped. The scorching sword light was like a fire being extinguished. It immediately dimmed. Song Yu looked at the scene in front of him in disbelief. The sword was still in his hand, but it was difficult for it to move forward. Two fingers appeared in front of him, firmly holding the sword. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't move it in the slightest. Impossible! How can your skills be so powerful? Song Yu shook her head fiercely. It was as if she had seen a ghost. She couldn't stop chattering. He hadn't seen Tang Zheng for a long time. He didn't have an intelligence system, so he naturally didn't know that Tang Zheng's skills had improved so quickly. So when he saw Tang Zheng fight again, it was like a completely different person. This blow couldn't be said to be not serious. It almost caused the self-confidence that he had built up with great difficulty to collapse. Tang Zheng smiled faintly. He looked at him as if he was looking at a clown and said, Song Yu, since you escaped once, why didn't you hide properly? Instead, you came out to stir up trouble. This is courting death. You can't blame others. You really want to kill me? At this point, you're still asking such an idiotic question. Don't you think you're too retarded? Tang Zheng said sarcastically. Song Yu's face flushed red. With a loud roar, she used all her skills and finally broke free from Tang Zheng's fingers. Her sword trembled, and sword flowers scattered down. They were like small suns that surrounded Tang Zheng. Shwa shwa shwa. Tang Zheng's expression didn't change. The war soul sword appeared out of thin air. As the sword light flashed, all the small suns exploded. With a kacha, the war soul sword slashed onto Song Yu's sword. The sword broke into two pieces. The war soul sword stopped at Song Yu's heart. Song Yu's body stiffened. She was dumbstruck. Chapter 1161. Wait a minute. Seeing that Tang Zheng was going to kill Song Yu, Xiao Xiao covered his wound and stumbled over. Tang Zheng turned his head and asked, Why? Do you still want to protect him? Xiao Xiao coldly shook his head. Of course not. People like him can only blame themselves for dying 1,000 times. It's just I want to know about Master. Master must have told me before he died. I want to hear from him. What qualifications does an abandoned disciple like you have to mention, Master? Song Yu clamored. Xiao Zhao's face became unnatural, and he said, Sword Pavilion will always be my sect, and Master will always be my closest person. No matter what you do, you can't change this. Tell me, what is Master's last words? Song Yu snorted coldly, and the corner of his mouth gently twitched. A strange look flashed across his face, and he said resolutely, I won't tell you. Tang Zheng had been staring at Song Yu closely. Seeing his reaction, his heart moved, and he said, Song Yu, if you don't want to suffer before you die, then you'd better tell me honestly. Dream on. Song Yu did not shrink back. Do you really want to know? Tang Zheng ignored him and asked Xiao Xiao coldly. Xiao Xiao nodded heavily. I couldn't see Master for the last time, so I want to listen to his last words. Well, as you wish. Tang Zheng promised. Song Yu sneered and said in his heart, if I don't open my mouth, how can you know? The sword god's last regrets naturally couldn't be known to the other side. Then he would be exposed. Seeing Tang Zheng's calm look and confident appearance, Song Yu disdainfully asked, if I don't say, you won't know. Really? I have a way. The magical power of a cultivator is often beyond your imagination. No matter how deep you hide, I have a way to know. Tang Zheng's mouth evoked a mysterious smile. Song Yu suddenly had an ominous premonition, and his heart thumped. Seeing Tang Zheng's big hand grabbing his head, he exclaimed and cried out, wait a minute. What? You want to say it yourself again? Tang Zheng asked. Song Yu hesitated, and finally nodded and said, yes, I'll tell you. What did Master say? Master imparted the 9 heavens Milky Way false sword art to me, and also passed down the sword pavilion to me, allowing me to lead the sword pavilion to greater heights. Impossible. Xiao immediately shook to deny it. Why is it impossible? Song Yu's heart was beating like a drum. Although I was expelled from the sword pavilion, I know Master very well. He absolutely can't pass the sword pavilion to you. The 7 kills is still there, and it's not your turn at all. Xiao Xiao said firmly and solemnly. Song Yu's face became unnatural, and he said disapprovingly, you are an abandoned disciple of the sword pavilion. What do you know? How can you guess Master's foresight? These are Master's last words. You could believe it or not. Xiao Xiao still shook his head. I will never believe your nonsense. Song Yu's lie was exposed, but he still said without changing his face, these are the true last words of Master. You don't believe it because you are an abandoned disciple of the sword pavilion. No, you are lying. Xiao Xiao's mood became excited. Tang Zheng said calmly, whether it is true or not, we will know after testing it. What are you going to do? Song Yu's face suddenly changed, and he stared at Tang Zheng and asked, I said that there are many magical powers that you don't understand, such as the soul-searching technique. When his voice fell, Tang Zheng's big hand fell on Song Yu's head. Song Yu tried to struggle, but it was no use. Ah! He screamed in agony, as if his brain was being torn apart. Stop! Stop! I'm telling the truth. Too late. Tang Zheng was not interested in Song Yu's little tricks. Whether he really wanted to tell the truth or deceive, he didn't care. The soul-searching technique could test all his words. The shouting stopped abruptly, as if the close button was suddenly pressed. He was dumbstruck, and his eyes had completely lost their light. Tang Zheng's expression changed. He was surprised by the information obtained by the soul-searching technique. Finally, his eyes were firmly fixed on Song Yu's face. This handsome face was myopic and dull. However, the crimes committed by the other party made Tang Zheng feel cold. Finally, Tang Zheng let go of his hand. Song Yu still did not respond, as if his soul had been taken away, and he was like a walking corpse. How is it? Xiao Xiao saw the situation and quickly asked. Tang Zheng let out a long sigh and said, You are right. He did hide the truth from you. Xiao Xiao was relieved. With an expression of, I knew it was like this, he asked curiously, What is the truth? At this time, Yi Dingdang and Feng Shishir joined forces. With the help of Tian Chanzi, they had also suppressed the sword slaves. One by one, the sword slaves fell to the ground, wailing. They did not kill them. Therefore, although these sword slaves cried out fiercely, in fact, their lives were not in danger. When the sword slaves saw that Song Yu had become a fool and did not respond, they all understood that the situation was hopeless. They also lost the thought of resistance. Several people who were stubbornly resisting also threw down their weapons, looking depressed. Almost everyone heard the conversation between Song Yu and Xiao Xiao. Seeing Tang Zheng mention the word truth, everyone's attention was attracted. What is the truth? Yi Dingdang also asked. Tang Zheng looked at them deeply and said, The truth is that the sword god did not pass it to him, but to Qi Sha. Xiao Xiao suddenly realized and said indignantly, I knew it was like this. How could Master pass it to him? The Ninth Heaven Galaxy Fall Sword technique was definitely not passed to him by Master, right? Tang Zheng nodded, yes. Xiao Xiao gritted his teeth and stared fiercely at the group of sword slaves. He said indignantly, as people of the Sword Pavilion, do you understand what the truth is? This person actually tampered with the last words of the Sword God and took the Sword Pavilion for himself. This is the real deceiving the Master and destroying the ancestors. Xiao Xiao was very excited and his saliva splashed everywhere. Suddenly, he looked up at the sky and said with sadness and joy, Master, are you in heaven? The truth is finally out. I haven't finished yet. Xiao Xiao's action made Tang Zheng say again. Xiao Xiao was startled and asked thoughtfully, does he have any other unknown crimes? Tang Zheng nodded. You guessed right, but this matter is too shocking. You have to be mentally prepared. He already knew that Xiao Xiao had deep feelings for the Sword Pavilion and the Sword God. Although Xiao Xiao had died once and surrendered to Tang Zheng, his feelings for the Sword God had not weakened in the slightest. Xiao Xiao said carelessly, don't worry, I haven't seen anything in these years. You can say it, I'm fine. The Sword God was also killed by Song Yu. Tang Zheng hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he said the shocking truth. Xiao Xiao seemed to have been cast a spell on him and instantly became sluggish. His mouth was wide open, almost enough to stuff a big steam bun in. The other sword slaves were also stunned. They looked at each other in dismay. Then, all eyes focused on Song Yu, but he didn't react at all. Saliva flowed out from the corner of his mouth, but he didn't know. The Sword God was killed by Song Yu? This sentence echoed in everyone's mind. Although this sentence came from Tang Zheng's mouth, which was equivalent to coming from the mouth of the enemy, the sword slaves didn't doubt it and immediately agreed with this sentence. The sword slaves were not stupid. From Song Yu's usual words and actions, they could see that he was a decisive and ruthless person. If it was someone else who did such a heartless thing, perhaps some people would doubt it. But if it was Song Yu who did it, their first reaction was not to doubt, but to believe. Tian Chanzi sighed and said, this kind of person who deceives his master and destroys his ancestors is a scourge in the world. Kill him. Yi Dingdang said with deep sympathy, yes, kill him. This kind of person doesn't deserve to live in this world. She never dreamed that she would almost marry such a person. If she really succeeded, it would be a nightmare for her life. As Tian Chanzi's disciple, Fang Shishir naturally didn't hesitate to say, how can there be such a person in the world? Killing Master, is he still human? Of course, Song Yu was a human, but he was worse than a pig or a dog. People had many bad habits, but they must have at least moral values. Song Yu's values had completely collapsed, and there was no bottom line at all. This kind of person could no longer be called a human, but a walking corpse. You killed, Master? Xiao Xiao trembled all over. He walked step by step toward Song Yu, and even his voice was trembling. His face had undergone a huge change. Many complex expressions merged together, entanglement, pain, anger, and so on. As long as one looked at it, one could feel the feeling in his heart at this moment. Song Yu's mouth was drooling. He stared blankly at Xiao Xiao and suddenly grinned. Did you kill Master? Xiao Xiao trembled even more fiercely and asked fiercely, kill. Song Yu began to chuckle stutteringly. Although the word kill was vague, it could still be heard clearly. It was like a fuse that ignited the powder keg that had been accumulating for a long time. I'm going to kill you and avenge Master. Xiao Xiao still held a broken sword in his hand. When his voice fell, the broken sword was sent out. Puff! The broken sword pierced Song Yu's chest. Song Yu's whole body was stiff, and he screamed in a heart-wrenching voice. But no one thought that he was pitiful. This was what he deserved. Kill you. After Xiao Zhao's sword hit him, he didn't stop. He crazily shot out his palms. Bang! Song Yu flew out and fell heavily to the ground. He spat out blood and kept twitching. The broken sword was still inserted in his chest, like a nail, nailing him to the column of shame. Bang! A pair of knees heavily knelt on the ground. Xiao Xiao looked up to the sky and screamed. He cried bitterly and shouted, "Master, I finally avenged you and cleaned up the sect. This kind of person who killed his master, I want to cut him into pieces. Only then can I pay tribute to the spirit of Master and his fellow disciples in heaven." The sound of crying resounded through the world, making those who heard it feel sad. Heaven and earth could testify that Xiao Xiaoling's feelings for the Sword Pavilion and the Sword God were probably the strongest in the Sword Pavilion. But after all, he was an abandoned disciple who was expelled from a sect. If it was the Sword God, he would probably sigh. The sword slaves stared blankly at the scene. Many people sadly wiped their tears. Perhaps Sword God was not a good enough leader, but the swordsmanship they learned was, after all, passed down from Sword God. This master's kindness could never be erased. The trace of kindness in many people's hearts was also aroused. Their expressions were gloomy. Some people lay on the ground and sobbed in a low voice. They followed Song Yu, which was equivalent to betraying Sword Pavilion and Sword God. This blow was really not light. Tang Zheng and the others looked at each other in dismay, but they didn't sigh. Although Sword God was an enemy, he had cultivated a disciple like Xiao Xiao Xiao. Perhaps it was also his proudest thing, which made people respect him. Of course, no one was perfect. Sword God's eyes would be blinded by villains. He actually accepted a disciple like Song Yu, which eventually led to a fatal disaster. Chapter 1162. Song Yu lay straight on the ground and finished his life. The others were immersed in complex emotions. The sword slaves knelt on the ground, their faces ashen. They were very clear about what was waiting for them. Death. Although the sword slaves were the elites of the sword, they were not afraid of death. Xiao Xiaoling wiped away his tears, stood up, and walked to the front of Song Yu, looking down at his corpse. Song Yu's eyes were wide open, but he had lost his vitality. Xiao Xiaoling really wanted to tear Song Yu into pieces, but seeing that he was dead, this idea disappeared. "You are worse than a beast, but I am not. Since you are dead, then Master's revenge will be avenged," Xiao Xiaoling said coldly. Tang Zheng looked at Xiao Xiaoling with relief. He didn't completely lose himself because of hatred, which made him appreciate it very much. How do we deal with these people? Yi Dingdang also put away her emotions, pointed to the sword slave, and asked. The sword slave looked at Tang Zheng nervously, his eyes full of pleading. Tang Zheng didn't pay attention to it all, but looked at Xiao Xiaoling. Xiao Xiaoling turned his head and looked at Tang Zheng. He said, "Young Master Tang, can I ask you a presumptuous request?" "What's the matter?" Xiao Xiaoling looked at the sword slave deeply and said, "I hope young Master Tang will let them live. Although these people helped the tyrant and are with Song Yu, they are swordsmen after all. I don't want my hands to be stained with the blood of my fellow disciples." These words were full of sincere feelings. Tang Zheng couldn't help but look at Xiao Xiaoling with admiration. In the past, he was a killer who killed without blinking. Unexpectedly, he had such a kind side. This was completely different from his original image, which was amazing. Tang Zheng didn't express his opinion, but asked, "But they just wanted to kill you?" "That's because of Song Yu's bewitchment. Now that Song Yu is dead, let's put an end to everything." Tang Zheng secretly nodded, and finally glanced at the sword slave whose eyes were full of expectation and pleading. He said, "You have a big life, and Xiao Xiaoling is pleading for you. Otherwise, I will not let you go just because you are helping the tyrant and are in cahoots with Song Yu." The sword servant was overjoyed at the unexpected good news as he continuously bowed to Tang Zheng in thanks. "You don't have to thank me. The one who should be thanked is him." Tang Zheng pointed to Xiao Xiaoling and said. The sword slaves thanked Xiao one after another. They couldn't see the situation of life and death just now. "Xiao Xiaoling, you are the disciple of the sword god. Naturally, you don't want the inheritance of the sword to be interrupted. So, I suggest you lead these people to rebuild the sword. Tang Zheng finished speaking. His big hand pulled Song Yu's body through the air. With a whoosh, a sword manual flew into his hand. On it were the words, Ninth Heaven Galaxy Fall. This is the Ninth Heaven Galaxy Fall sword technique. It is the heart and soul of the sword god. I hope it will be carried forward in your hands. Tang Zheng threw the sword manual into Xiao Xiaoling's hand. He caught the sword manual in a daze, at a loss. Of course, he understood the importance of this sword manual. Don't waste my efforts, Tang Zheng warned. But Xiao Xiaoling subconsciously wanted to refuse. After all, he used to be a sword disciple. If he held the sword, it would definitely cause others to criticize him. Pedantic, Tang Zheng sighed and winked at the sword slave. There were many shrewd people among the sword slaves. They actually understood Tang Zheng's meaning. They bowed to Xiao Xiaoling and shouted, "Please hold the sword." The other servants also woke up from a dream and bowed down. "Please hold the sword." Xiao Xiaoling couldn't understand Tang Zheng's intentions. He looked at him gratefully. His mood fluctuated. He couldn't help but be deeply impressed by Tang Zheng. In the past, he surrendered to Tang Zheng because of his own promise, not out of sincerity. But from this moment onwards, his attitude towards Tang Zheng underwent a 180-degree change, as he sincerely pledged his allegiance to him. "Thank you." He bowed deeply towards Tang Zheng and said to the sword slaves kneeling on the ground, "All of you, get up." Boom. "Thank you." The sword's breath will continue in the hands of Xiao Xiaoling. Boom. Suddenly, a loud noise woke everyone up. Everyone was shocked and hurriedly looked up, only to see a hole torn in the sky. No, this was not a hole in the sky. This was a hole in the 6 directions, 8 desolation array that guarded the Tree of Life. At first, the 6 directions, 8 desolation array was taught to Tang Zheng by Tian Chanzi. Then, he personally set up the array and activated it. He had been guarding the Tree of Life without any mistakes. In his impression, the 6 directions, 8 desolation array had a strong enough defense. However, the scene in front of him told him that nothing in the world was absolute. The 6 directions, 8 desolation array was broken. Who attacked the 6 directions, 8 desolation array? Tian Chanzi also reacted. He looked as if he was facing a great enemy. He shouted, "Who is it?" Whoosh, whoosh. In the sky, a figure came in the blink of an eye and stopped steadily above the Tree of Life. Ripples appeared around the Tree of Life, flowing with light and color, and then it collapsed little by little. Bang, bang. The ground made a series of explosions. Sand and dust were everywhere, and a white light was exposed from the ground. Heaven and Earth Obsidian. Tang Zheng's pupils shrank. He naturally recognized it. After the 6 directions, 8 desolation array was broken, the Heaven and Earth Obsidian was also exposed. They're here for the Heaven and Earth Obsidian. Tang Zheng had an idea and immediately saw through the other party's motive. He raised his head and stared at the group of people in the sky. As expected, he found a familiar figure in the crowd. The demon race's Saint King. What? It's the demon race's people. When the others heard these words, they immediately realized the danger. They were guarding against Chi Yu, who had designs on the Heaven and Earth Obsidian, so they came from far away. They didn't expect the demon race to move so quickly and follow them closely. If it wasn't for the inner demon's warning, the demon race would have been the first to get it. Tang Zheng rejoiced and reminded loudly, "They're here for the Heaven and Earth Obsidian. Everyone, be careful. This group of people is very strong. Don't underestimate them." When the sword slaves saw this group of demon race flying in the sky, they were stunned. Many of them were scared pale and trembling. Tang Zheng glanced at the sword slave and said, "Xiao Xiaoling, you take them away." "No." Xiao Xiaoling froze for a moment and then flatly refused. "They're enemies, of course we have to fight together. If you don't want the Sword Empress to die, then listen to me and take them away," Tang Zheng said unquestionably. Most of the sword slaves were innate realm martial artists. Compared with the demon race's cultivators, their strength was really too low. They couldn't play much of a role at all. It was better to save their lives than to die. Xiao Xiaoling naturally understood Tang Zheng's intentions, but he really couldn't do something like running away. What are you still standing there for? Go. Tang Zheng scolded angrily. Xiao Xiaoling hesitated for a moment, looked at the demon race in the sky, stomped his feet, and said go. After saying that, he led the sword slaves and turned to leave. From time to time, some people looked back, but when they saw the high and mighty demon race in the sky, their heartstrings trembled and their faces turned pale. Tang Zheng looked at Yi Dingdang and Fang Shishir and said, I know you won't go. Yi Dingdang and Fang Shishir looked at each other, showing a proud expression, and said, you are smart. We are facing difficulties together. How can we run away? But the sword has no eyes. The other party is still a vicious and merciless demon race. You must be careful. Tang Zheng still did not forget to remind them. In the sky, Saint King looked at the people below, his eyes flashing. As for those sword slaves who left, he didn't put them in his heart. This is really as the ancestors said. If we were a step later, Tang Zheng would definitely beat us to it, and it would not be easy to get the heaven and earth Xian stone. Of course, my days in this boy's body are not in vain. Chi Yu's voice sounded. He did not say that even if Tang Zheng did not think of this, there was still the inner demons, and he had to be on guard. The inner demons were not only powerful, their spells were extraordinary, but also resourceful. Otherwise, it was impossible to fight with him and the Yellow Emperor for so many years. Chi Yu had been stored in the treasure box and was inseparable from Saint King. This operation was his proposal, of course. He would accompany them all the way. The demon race had been looking for a suitable parasite for him, but the people of the island nation were all dead. Even those corpses could not meet the requirements of Chi Yu, so he could not be reborn in the island nation. Helpless, they could only secretly return to Huaxia. With Chi Yu in the middle, the demon race was not wiped out like last time. Instead, they quietly sneaked into Huaxia and then secretly arrived at their destination. Of course, the demon race that returned to Huaxia this time was only a portion. The majority of the demon race's troops remained in the island nation and built their own headquarters. Island nation was an overseas land. No matter what Huaxia did, it would not be easy. This could effectively protect their strength. This was also Chi Yu's decision after careful consideration. He did not return to Huaxia in a large scale. He understood that Huaxia today was not the Huaxia of tens of thousands of years ago. The government was not completely powerless, and the power of technology was not to be underestimated. Ancestor, then what should we do now? Of course, we should snatch the heaven and earth obsidian. Most of the heaven and earth obsidian is buried here. If it falls into our hands, then Tang Zheng will not be able to rebuild the stairway to heaven. Naturally, we will be able to block the group of people from sky beyond heaven. Chi Yu said solemnly. He indeed thought of the same thing as the inner demons. Old people were shrewd, not to mention people at the level of Chi Yu and the inner demons. Their foresight was unique, and when they took one step, they saw 10 steps ahead. They were completely incomparable to ordinary people. Saint King said wholeheartedly, ancestors' words are reasonable. As long as we block the people from sky beyond heaven, then we have nothing to worry about. This world is ours. Back then, the Yellow Emperor took this great land from our hands, and now we will take it back. Chapter 1163. Saint King waved his hand and ordered, attack, take back the heaven and earth Xian stone. So. A large group of demon elites moved, descending from the sky and pouncing towards the heaven and earth Xian stone below the tree of life. Move, Tang Zheng growled. Without any fancy moves, he rushed towards the heaven and earth Xian stone like lightning. The heaven and earth Xian stone was scattered around the tree of life. Now that it was completely exposed, it was sparkling and translucent, attracting everyone's attention. Seeing that a demon was about to get close to the heaven and earth Xian stone, Tang Zheng's head moved, and the war soul sword flew out from his hand, and with a poochy sound, it slashed onto that person's arm. Blood splattered everywhere. That person screamed miserably and fell down. Tang Zheng grabbed with his hand, using the sky swallowing technique. A black hole immediately appeared in his palm, and the sound of wind whistling could be heard. A few pieces of heaven and earth shinstone were sucked into his palm, and with a flash of summer heaven, the heaven and earth shinstone fell into summer heaven. Even though Tang Zheng had the sky swallowing technique, there was nothing he could do, because the heaven and earth shinstone was too scattered and the distance was too far. There were even many behind the gigantic tree of life, blocked by the gigantic tree trunk, and the sky swallowing technique was useless. Tian Chanzi also moved. He and Tang Zheng parted ways, one in front and one behind. He went around the back of the tree of life. After repelling a few demons, he took the heaven and earth Shin stone for himself. There were a total of 66 heaven and earth Shin stone buried here, and he and Tang Zheng had only taken back a few pieces. The demon elites had all arrived under the tree. All kinds of treasures lit up, and the originally cool tree of life also exploded with a dazzling light. Fang Shi and Yi Dingdang were also fighting head-on with the demon clan. Their strength was not bad, and they were actually not at a disadvantage. This was because they knew that they lacked battle experience, so they cooperated with each other and had a tacit understanding. Tang Zheng repelled a few more demon clan S. His strength was not inferior to the ordinary elites of the demon clan S, and he was not at a disadvantage at all. In addition, he used the Taiji Yin-Yang sword technique, causing a few demon clan S to fall under his sword. Let's stop here. Suddenly, a voice exploded above his head. He didn't need to raise his head to know who it was. Saint King. Tang Zheng's whole body tensed up, and he became extremely alert. The long sword in his hand trembled, and with a swoosh, 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 he didn't even look at it. Just by feeling, the power of this sword couldn't be underestimated. Oomph. Petty tricks. Saint King snorted in disdain. Light blossomed from his hand, and the heaven-opening axe flew out of his hand, chopping down from the sky. Tang Zheng's Tai Chi Yin-Yang sword technique was exquisite beyond compare. The heaven-splitting axe appeared to be very clumsy, but with one strike of strength, it was able to defeat 10, and it chopped down on the war soul sword. Boom! With a loud sound, Tang Zheng's feet sank into the ground. His arms trembled nonstop, and the war soul sword flew out of his hands. Cracks appeared on the ground as if there was an earthquake. Mountains collapsed, and the earth cracked. Tang Zheng had once blocked Saint King's attack. That time, he used the holy armor shield to defend. Although he was injured and was sent flying, it was much easier than this time. It was obvious that the strength of Saint King's attack this time was very terrifying. However, he didn't know that Saint King had let Tang Zheng escape last time and was fiercely reprimanded by Qi Yu. Therefore, he hated Tang Zheng. Although he knew that Tian Chanzi's cultivation was higher, he still came to deal with Tang Zheng without hesitation. Tang Zheng clenched his teeth so tightly that they were trembling. The war soul sword flew away, and he hurriedly summoned the holy armor shield. When the heaven-opening axe was about to hit his body, the holy armor shield blocked the attack. With a boom, the holy armor shield trembled violently. Tang Zheng's arm went numb, but in the end, he still held on. However, half of his body was almost sunk into the soil, and he was in a sorry state. He was overwhelmed with shock. The difference in strength between him and Saint King was too great. Suddenly, from the corner of his eyes, he saw that a few demon clan S had already snatched away a few heaven and earth black stones. He immediately bared his teeth and roared. No matter how loud his roar was, it couldn't change this reality. Those few heaven and earth black stones were snatched away by the demon clan. It wouldn't be easy to snatch them back. This was equivalent to the loss of the last method to restrain the demon clan. The strong sense of defeat completely ignited Tang Zheng's anger, and he roared towards the sky. The heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrow appeared in his hands at the same time. He drew the bow and sword and shot towards Saint King. Saint King had always been on guard against the shooting sun arrow. The last time he almost suffered a great loss from the shooting sun arrow, it was still fresh in his memory. Furthermore, even the soul of the golden crow was shot down by the shooting sun arrow. How could he underestimate it? Seeing the flash of the arrow, Saint King's mind moved, and the heaven-opening axe descended once again. Boom! When the arrow and axe collided, it was like a bomb exploding, and the shock waves spread out in all directions. At the same time, Tang Zheng channeled his power, and with a leap, he soared into the sky from the soil, escaping from his predicament. Saint King also flew backwards. This time, Tang Zheng used all his strength to attack, causing Saint King to feel threatened. He was actually also in the semi-god realm, but he was only at the 7th stage of the semi-god realm. One had to know that in the sky beyond heaven, he was an expert in the Mahayana realm. However, after passing through the space gate, his power was weakened. This was a common phenomenon. When returning from the sky beyond heaven through the space gate, one's power would be weakened to varying degrees. However, after a period of time, one's power would slowly recover. Therefore, this wouldn't have much of an impact. Saint King could see at a glance that Tang Zheng's cultivation had increased from the last time, reaching the semi-god realm. This was beyond his imagination, and it made him understand that this person was extraordinary. If he didn't get rid of him, he would become a big problem in the future. Therefore, although his attack didn't have any effect, his body flipped in midair, and the heaven-opening axe in his hand grew bigger again, until it was almost the same as his height. Tang Zheng, this is just the appetizer. The main course has just begun. Saint King said with a murderous look. Whoosh! The heaven-opening axe left the air, and with a whistling sound, it attacked Tang Zheng fiercely. Tang Zheng's pupils suddenly shrank, and he shouted, Shooting sun arrow! Whoosh! The shooting sun arrow shot out from his hand again. The shooting sun arrow was connected to his mind, and with lightning speed, it once again collided with the heaven-opening axe head-on. Thunder exploded. Tang Zheng was sent flying. Saint King retreated a few steps, but stabilized his body. His cultivation was much higher than Tang Zheng's, and furthermore, the heaven-opening axe was also a sacred weapon. Although it was slightly inferior to the heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrow, it was still not to be underestimated. Tang Zheng fiercely smashed into the trunk of the Tree of Life, creating a large crater in the trunk, and juice splattered everywhere. It had to be known that back then, Xingfeng had used professional equipment to chisel open the trunk of the Tree of Life, but Tang Zheng had actually smashed a large crater in the trunk. If not for the fact that he had cultivated the primal chaos Vajra spell and his body's toughness far exceeded that of ordinary people, just this attack alone would have been enough to make him suffer. Cough, cough. Tang Zheng coughed violently, blood flowing out from the corner of his mouth. He was in a sorry state. However, his eyes were still full of spirit. He was not prepared to retreat. Although he knew that he was at a disadvantage in this battle, he could only continue to fight. If he retreated, then even more heaven and earth profound stone would fall into the hands of the demon clan. He had already seen more than 10 pieces of heaven and earth profound stone fall into the hands of the demon clan. If this continued, then there would really be nothing he could do. Although Fang Shi and Yi Dingdang had a tacit understanding of each other, they were still weak. Under a series of swift and fierce attacks, the disadvantage of the two gradually became apparent. Seeing that, Tang Zheng roared, his palm felt wet, and immediately understood that he had touched the sap of the Tree of Life. The sap of the Tree of Life was like a nectar containing a powerful energy. Back then, Xingfeng had spent a lot of effort to take out a small bottle, and in the end, it fell into Tang Zheng's hands. He glanced at the tree trunk beside him, and the sap quickly flowed down. Tang Zheng grabbed the sap with his big hand and poured it into his mouth. Immediately, a powerful energy exploded in his throat, and then flowed through his 8 extraordinary meridians, limbs, and bones. Tang Zheng felt as if his body was about to explode and was filled with energy again. With a roar, he shot out from the tree trunk like a cannonball, directly pouncing towards Yi Dingdang and Fang Shishir. With a wave of his hand, the war soul sword that had landed in the distance flew back into his hand. Puff, puff, puff. The war soul sword was like harvesting radishes. A few large heads and bodies flew out with all their might. The demon clan that surrounded the two of them died one after another, and the two of them finally heaved a sigh of relief. Although they had participated in a few battles, it was slightly different from this one. This time, the people who surrounded them were all experts of the demon clan. They were all cultivators, and there was a difference between heaven and earth between them and martial artists. At the beginning, the two of them were full of fighting spirit, but gradually they felt the pressure. However, they had no way out and could only continue to fight bravely. "Are you guys all right?" Tang Zheng asked with concern. Yi Dingdang squeezed out a smile that was even uglier than crying and said, "Of course we're fine." Fang Shishir's expression was also ugly. If it was in the past, when she saw the scene of her head being separated from her body, she would have vomited long ago. However, after experiencing so much, her nerves had become bigger, and she would not have stage fright. Seeing that Yi Dingdang was still able to laugh, Tang Zheng was slightly relieved and said, "You guys go into Sumi Tian. I will deal with them." "No, we want to fight side by side with you." The two of them shook their heads, their attitudes as resolute as ever. However, this time, Tang Zheng did not follow their wishes because he had already realized that the danger this time was too great. If he was not careful and did not take care of them, it would lead to a huge mistake, and he would regret it for the rest of his life. "Come in." Tang Zheng did not allow them to explain, and with a wave of his hand, the light of Sumi Tian flickered and enveloped the two of them. In the next second, the two of them disappeared without a trace, entering Sumi Tian. Tang Zheng finally heaved a sigh of relief. Without any worries, he suddenly turned around and faced Saint King from afar. The sage also looked at him with a burning gaze. His eyes blossomed with radiance as he said with interest, "Tisk, Tiske, you're truly an unkillable cockroach. You've endured such a powerful attack, yet you still have battle strength." Tang Zheng put the few pieces of heaven and earth obsidian at his feet into Sumi Tian and said with a cold smile, "I am an unkillable cockroach. If you want to kill me, then come. Let's see if you can succeed." Chapter 1164. The heaven-splitting axe hacked down fiercely. This time, the momentum was even greater. The ground split open, and a huge crack spread out from under Tang Zheng's feet. Tang Zheng felt it even more strongly. He felt a force that was about to split his head open. He forcefully slashed out, and the battle soul flew out. Then, he drew his bow and shot an arrow. The shooting sun arrow whistled out again. A sword and an arrow blocked the heaven-splitting axe from the front and back. They were in a deadlock in midair. Bang! The battle soul flew out and sank into the ground, disappearing. The shooting sun arrow and the heaven-splitting axe retreated a large distance at the same time. At the same time, Saint King's figure flashed, and he was already in front of Tang Zheng. He punched out, as if splitting the sky and earth. Tang Zheng hurriedly raised the holy armor shield to defend. After a loud bang, Tang Zheng hurriedly retreated. His legs drew a deep groove in the ground, and he retreated dozens of meters before stopping. Boom! In midair, the shooting sun arrow was hacked down by the heaven-splitting axe. It shot to the ground, and the tail of the arrow was still trembling. The heaven-splitting axe's attack did not decrease, and it directly struck the holy armor shield. Gotcha! A long crack appeared on the holy armor shield. The holy armor shield was only a heaven-grade magic treasure, and it could not be compared to a saint-grade magic treasure. This time, it finally could not block it. Tang Zheng was extremely frustrated. Before the holy armor shield was completely destroyed, he hurriedly kept it in Sumeru world. Facing the Saint King barehanded, he was even less of a match. Azura! Helplessly, he roared. As soon as his mind moved, Shura flew out from Sumeru world. His tall body looked down at everything under his feet. The Azura had been suppressed by the Ksitigarbha Sutra, so even in Sumeru world, he was in a state of hibernation. At this moment, after leaving Sumeru world, Tangjung also stopped using the Ksitigarbha Sutra to suppress him. He suddenly opened his eyes, which were as red as blood. It made people feel as if they had fallen into a sea of corpses. It was extremely terrifying. Roar! Azura's roar reverberated throughout the world, causing the leaves of the tree of life to rustle. It was Saint King's first time seeing Azura. He was shocked as he felt a strong killing intent from the other party. He asked in horror, "What is this?" "Azura." Chiyu's voice answered first. Tang Zheng was stunned and exclaimed, "Chiyu! Haha, kid, we meet again." Chiyu laughed. "Chiyu, you treacherous fellow. You actually bewitched the Devil Clan to steal the heaven and earth obsidian." Tang Zheng said indignantly. "This is called preparing for a rainy day. Do you understand? It's not like I don't know what you're thinking. You've already released the 5-clawed golden dragon, which means that you've obtained the heaven and earth obsidian under the Imperial City. All the heaven and earth obsidian needed to reforge the stairway to heaven have appeared. If I don't take the first step and snatch the heaven and earth obsidian under the tree of life, wouldn't that give you the chance to reforge the stairway to heaven?" Chi said proudly. "Do you think you can succeed?" Tang Jin questioned. "The fact have proven that I've succeeded. Didn't you see that my people have already taken away a lot of heaven and earth obsidian? If you can't gather all the heaven and earth obsidian, then don't even think about reforging the stairway to heaven. Am I right?" Tang Zheng had no way to refute. Chiyu's plan had indeed succeeded. He had perfectly predicted that the Devil Clan would return to Huaxia so quickly and head straight for the Tree of Life. As long as he lacked even one heaven and earth obsidian, all his efforts would be in vain. Shura is a creature from the world of spirits and souls. He's extraordinary. You may not be his opponent, so be careful. Chiyu warned. Saint King was not afraid. He was eager to give it a try. A creature from the world of spirits and souls? No wonder the Yin Chi on his body is so heavy. It's like he's entered a graveyard. Ancestor, don't worry. I'll definitely make this big guy's soul scatter. Dream on. Tang Zheng had seen Shura's strength. He was an existence that could compete with the Dizong of Goguryeo. Although Saint King was powerful, Tang Zheng felt that he was still inferior to the Dizong of Goguryeo. Saint King roared and took the lead to attack Shura. The Azura had just broken free from the suppression of the Ksitigarbha Sutra. When he saw the sage rushing over, all of his attention was immediately attracted by the sage. With a roar, the Azura saber slashed out with a schwa sound. The Shura saber collided with the heaven-splitting axe. Sparks flew everywhere. The heaven-splitting innate skill collapsed, and a small gap appeared. Saint King trembled violently and spat out a mouthful of blood. He looked at Shura with a pale face. He had thought that Chiyu's words were exaggerated, but now he understood that it was not exaggerated at all. Shura's strength was really terrifying. Shura pursued and attacked Saint King with the Shura saber again. His body was tall, and when he attacked from midair, his strength was even more ferocious. Saint King raised the heaven-splitting axe with difficulty. With a flash of light, the heaven-splitting axe flew out of his hand and landed on the ground. It quickly shrank and finally became the size of a normal axe, dim and dull. Saint King retreated in a sorry state. Suddenly, his foot was tripped by something, and he fell heavily to the ground. Shura walked towards him step by step. The violent Yin Chi rushed towards him, causing him to shudder. Tang Zheng took advantage of this gap and quickly defeated a few demon elites. He collected more than 10 heaven and earth obsidian. At the same time, Tian Chanzi also collected dozens of heaven and earth obsidian on the other side of the Tree of Life. The demons were no match for him at all. Hearing such a big commotion on the other side, he collected the heaven and earth obsidian and quickly moved over. He happened to see the battle between Shura and Saint King. The corner of his mouth twitched a few times. Shura is really too powerful. Saint King fell to the ground and looked at the thing that tripped him. It was actually a corpse, Song Yu's corpse. Damn it, Saint King cursed. He was about to push the corpse away when Chi Yu shouted, "Wait, Ancestor, what's wrong? The situation is urgent. I can't care so much. I can only settle for the second best." Chi Yu said helplessly. Saint King was confused. Seeing that Shura was about to reach him, he anxiously asked, "Ancestor, shut up. It's all because you're too weak. If I didn't make a move, you would definitely die in front of Shura." Chi Yu said hatefully. Saint King looked ashamed, but immediately became overjoyed and said, "Ancestor, you're saying that you're going to be reborn?" Yes. Although this body isn't too good, in order to avoid total annihilation, this is the only way. You go and restrain Shura," Chi Yu ordered. Saint King looked at Shura deeply and swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Although he knew that he was no match for Shura, for Chi Yu, he could only give it his all. Saint King roared, as if to encourage himself, and rushed towards Shura. However, he didn't confront him directly. Instead, he pretended to be polite and restrained Shura. Shura couldn't see through Saint King's thoughts. He opened and closed wide, Shura's blade dancing. This area was stirred up by this battle, as if the sky and earth were turned upside down, completely changing its appearance. The flowers and plants on the ground were destroyed, and even the tree of life was left with many scars. Juice flowed down the tree trunk, as if it was crying. Tang Zheng was busy collecting Xian stones of heaven and earth. He didn't hear the conversation between Shura and Chi Yu. After some effort, he finally collected all the Xian stones of heaven and earth on the ground. However, there were still more than 20 that fell into the hands of the demon clan. There was no way to snatch them one by one, unless they caught all the demon clan in one fell swoop. Tian Chanzi stopped the demon clan. "Don't let them escape," Tang Zheng reminded loudly. Tian Chanzi's attention was attracted by Shura and Saint King. This level of life-and-death battle was rare. For Tian Chanzi, it was a rare opportunity to observe. Don't worry about those small fries. As long as Saint King is dead, they're nothing to worry about, Tian Chanzi said casually, but his heart was not relaxed at all. He was scared. If it weren't for Shura's help, he would have really failed miserably this time. The other demon clans were watching covetously, but they couldn't help at all. Most of these demon clans were in the Yuanying realm of the Golden Core realm. They were a level lower than Tang Zheng and Tian Chanzi. They could only watch anxiously. A few demon clans who were not afraid of death saw Saint King in danger and rushed to Shura, trying to help Saint King. Shura kicked a few times, and these people were immediately kicked. With a loud bang, they exploded and turned into a mass of flesh and blood. This made the other demon clans shrink back, and they didn't dare to approach. Saint King's body was already wounded. He had already called back the sky-splitting axe, but he was still no match for Shura. He was almost hit by Shura's saber several times. Saint King's face was pale. From time to time, he secretly looked at Song Yu's body. There was a treasure box next to her body, which contained Chi Yu's soul. Tang Zheng and Tian Chanzi's attention was attracted by the battle, and they didn't notice this scene. Little bits of light seeped out of the treasure box and sank into Song Yu's body. This body was quickly transformed, and the vitality that had been cut off gradually glowed again. The ordinary body was strengthened and became more solid. The narrow meridians were widened, and a little bit of true chi was born from the meridians. It flowed along the meridians to the limbs and bones, nourishing the body and tempering the body. A golden elixir gradually formed in the dantian, shining with golden light, as if it was going to come out of the body. The true chi revolved around the golden elixir rapidly, and the golden elixir grew bigger. Finally, as if it was earth-shattering, the golden elixir changed and gradually became the appearance of a human, with a head and limbs growing out. Yuanying. The golden elixir evolved into Yuanying. Yuanying's appearance became clear, and she looked exactly like Songyu, vivid and lifelike. Yuanying opened her eyes and looked at the changes in her body. Meridians and blood vessels grew out of Yuanying's body, and hair and bones grew out one by one. In the end, she was no different from a real person. Yuanying's eyes were flowing with purple light, and she was filled with a mysterious aura. Yuanying's lips curled up slightly, and at the same time, the corners of her body's mouth also curled up, revealing a strange smile. But she was lying flat, and no one noticed this smile at all. The battle between the Azura and Saint King became more and more thrilling. Saint King's heart almost jumped out of his chest, and he couldn't help but recall the days when he was in the heavens beyond heaven. Back then, he was on tenterhooks every day, and he could encounter such a tragic life and death battle at any time. He was tired of such days. He originally thought that after returning, he would become a peerless powerhouse, and no one would be able to challenge him. But the reality was too cruel. Songyu's body was completely transformed. At this moment, she was no longer Songyu, but Chiyu. Whoosh! Chapter 1165. Chiyu opened his eyes, and a bright light burst out from his eyes, which was very frightening. Songyu's shadow was gone. Although it was the same body, it was completely Chiyu. This was not the bluff of Songyu's strength, but a kind of strength from the inside to the outside, which was frightening. At a glance, people would recognize the awe in their hearts. Songyu stood up straight. Shura and Saint King were still fighting fiercely. The corner of Saint King's eyes had been paying attention to the direction of Chiyu. Finally, his eyes lit up and he showed joy. He shouted, "Ancestor!" Others also noticed the movement here. When they saw Songyu standing up straight, Tang Zheng and Tian Chanzi were surprised at the same time. The two of them saw Xiao Xiaoling's sword pierce Songyu's heart and cut off his vitality. But at this moment, Songyu stood up again. Could it be that he was resurrected? Tang Zheng did not have this ability. His 9 Revolution soul return pill could not save a dead person. What's the matter? Tian Chanzi took the lead in shouting. Tang Zheng stared at Songyu intently. When he heard the word ancestor from Saint King's mouth, his heart trembled. He was shocked and said, "Ancestor, could it be that you are Chiyu?" "Ha ha! Tang Zheng, you finally became one." Chiyu laughed wildly. His hair and beard were all standing up, and his clothes were fluttering. His face showed an insolent expression, which was completely different from Songyu. Tang Zheng finally determined that this was indeed not Songyu, but Chiyu's reincarnation. Chiyu had been trying to take away Tang Zheng's body. After all, both of them were Skywalkers. With the 9 Yang Saint body, Tang Zheng's physique was more compatible with Chiyu, which could guarantee Chiyu's cultivation and future achievements. Now, Chiyu actually chose the second best option and chose Songyu's body. Tang Zheng looked at Shura and immediately understood that this was Chiyu's decision. The situation of the battle between the Azura and the Sage was already very clear. If there was no external force, the Sage would definitely not be the Azura's opponent. Then, the Devil race would only be sending themselves to their deaths by rushing over here. Chiyu naturally wouldn't just sit by and watch. For his grand plan, the Devil race couldn't be completely annihilated, especially Saint King. That was why he took a step back and chose Songyu's body, in order to preserve the strength of the Devil race. Tang Zheng's expression had already changed. He looked at Chiyu and said, "Chiyu, I didn't think you would choose Songyu." Chiyu coldly snorted. "Do you think I want to?" There really were quite a few bodies here, but the others were all cultivators. Whether they were alive or dead, their bodies still contained the remnants of their original owners. Only Songyu was a martial artist. Martial artists and cultivators were two different systems. After Chi Yu took Songyu's body, he could completely change it according to his will. This was an advantage that cultivators couldn't compare to. That was why, in the end, Song Yu's body enjoyed this opportunity. If Song Yu knew in the underworld, he would definitely be very happy. He would even be willing to give his body to Qi Yu. He had always wanted to win against Tang Zheng. Before his death, he had always been firmly suppressed by Tang Zheng. He didn't even have the chance to resist. However, after his death, his dream came true. In another way, he used his own body as the price to win against Tang Zheng. Qi Yu had always been in Tang Zheng's body. He was very clear about the conflict between Tang Zheng and Song Yu. He coldly laughed and said, "Tang Zheng, although Song Yu is dead, I can still feel the strong resentment he left behind for you. He definitely wanted to win against you and kill you. Now that I have taken over his body, I can fulfill his wish." Tang Zheng's expression became colder and colder. He snorted and said, "You should know what kind of person Song Yu is. You will fulfill his wish." "Ha! However, Qi Yu, you are this kind of person, so I shouldn't be surprised." After saying this, Tang Zheng felt a little emotional. The Wu tribe and the demon tribe led by Qi Yu were completely different. They were not the same kind of people. He really couldn't imagine that the Wu tribe of ancient times would be Qi Yu's subordinates, or even the origin of the Zhili tribe. The Wu tribe was kind and pure, as if they had gathered the bright side of the world. Back then, why was the Wu tribe sealed? Tang Zheng suddenly thought, could it be that there was some unknown secret? Otherwise, why did Qi Yu keep avoiding talking about it? Aha! Tang Zheng, you know me very well. It's no wonder that we have been together for so long. Qi Yu laughed proudly. Since we are so familiar with each other, it's useless to say anything unnecessary. Let's fight. However, there is something I have to remind you. Although the Shura is powerful, he is not under your control. Tang Zheng snorted disapprovingly and said, "Then it's not too late for you to say such big words after you defeat the Shura." Qi Yu looked at Tang Zheng lightly, smiled strangely, and walked slowly towards the Shura. Saint King retreated to Qi Yu's side in a sorry state. He looked at him excitedly and said respectfully, "Ancestor, go back and watch carefully." Qi Yu said. Saint King said in fear and trepidation, "Yes." He looked at Qi Yu with eager eyes. Everyone looked at Qi Yu at the same time. The Shura's attention was also firmly attracted to Qi Yu. Although the Shura did not have consciousness, he was not stupid. He instinctively recognized that Qi Yu was the person who posed the greatest threat to him. For the greatest threat, the Shura naturally paid the greatest attention. Roar! The Shura roared and rushed toward Qi Yu step by step. His speed gradually became faster, and a cold wind blew. Sand and stones flew, and it was incomparably violent. When the other demons saw this, they instinctively retreated. Their faces were pale, and they realized that this level of battle was far beyond their ability to bear. To avoid being affected, it was better to retreat further away. Tang Zheng and Tian Chanzi did not retreat. Instead, they stared at the Shura. Tang Zheng was full of confidence in the Shura. He knew the Shura too well. The Shura was born in the Nine Serenities Hell. If it were not for the Dizong of Goguryeo, the world of spirits and souls would have been slaughtered by the Shura. Although Qi Yu was resurrected, his strength was definitely not at his peak. Inner demons, what was the cultivation level of Qi Yu back then? Tang Zheng asked. Of course it was the realm of great success. As for what it was in the end, I don't know. The inner demons replied. Tang Zheng had a rough idea. The inner demons and Qi Yu's cultivation level were not too different. The inner demons knew a lot about Qi Yu, so his words should be true. After a powerhouse of great success was resurrected, his cultivation level was definitely not low. As for the comparison with the Shura, that was unknown. Qi Yu was still walking step by step, very slowly toward the Shura. His face was calm, as if he did not put the Shura in his eyes at all. Finally, the Shura rushed in front of Qi Yu. The Shura blade fell from the sky and quickly slashed down. Qi Yu stretched out a hand and made a grabbing motion toward the ground. Bang! The ground exploded, and a cold light broke out of the ground. The War Soul sword flew out from the ground and fell into Qi Yu's hands. The sword light overflowed in all directions. Sword Soul, you and I are finally fighting side by side again. Let them see your true power. Chi gently flicked the War Soul sword. The War Soul sword buzzed and trembled, and the light became more and more dazzling. Chapter 1166. Tang Zheng stared at the War Soul sword in disbelief. He had thought that the War Soul sword would no longer listen to Qi Yu's control. Last time might have been a coincidence, but now he understood that his thoughts were too naive. Damn it, it must be the sword's spirit. When Qi Yu appeared and allowed the sword spirit to fuse into the Battle Soul sword, he actually left behind a backup plan so that he could control the Battle Soul sword from behind. He is really scheming. I was completely fooled by him. He tried to establish a connection with the War Soul sword, but found that there was no reaction at all. Qi Yu held the War Soul sword in his hand and stood tall. The sword light was dazzling as it descended from the sky and charged towards the Azura. The Azura saber shone brightly, leaving a long trail as it swept across the sky. In the next second, it fiercely collided with the War Soul sword. The two rays of light went against the flow and rushed into the sky from the point of impact. Rustle, rustle, rustle. The leaves fluttered in the air, and with a few cautious sounds, a few branches fell from the sky. The tree of life became a fish in the pond and was damaged once again. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth fluctuated violently. Tang Zheng shouted that something was wrong. In the past, the tree of life was protected by the 8 Desolation Great Array, so even if there was a battle, it would not be affected. But now that the Great Array had been broken, the tree of life had lost its protection. Although the Tree of Life's resistance to attacks was already very strong, it was still difficult for it to withstand the attacks of Qi Yu and the Azura. If the Tree of Life was affected, then the world's spiritual energy would change. If the Tree of Life fell, then the world's spiritual energy could no longer be transformed, let alone be raised to the level of a great world. Tang Zheng understood the stakes too well, so his expression became less serious. However, he and Tian Chanzi had no choice. Facing the battle between the Azura and Qi Yu, even he was powerless and could not participate. Tian Chanzi saw Tang Zheng's worry and comforted him. Whether the Tree of Life is damaged or not, that is a matter of the future. Let's take care of the things in front of us first and pass through this stage. Tang Zheng nodded bitterly. He had no other choice but to do this. Tian Chanzi changed the topic and said, however, Qi Yu's strength is really strong. Even after being reborn, he still has such a cultivation base. No wonder he was the leader of a powerful tribe in ancient times and almost dominated the world. After Tian Chanzi was reborn, his cultivation had dropped a lot compared to when he was alive, so he knew that Qi Yu's current strength was far below his true level. There is no doubt that in the future, Qi Yu's cultivation would advance by leaps and bounds, gradually returning to his peak state. At that time, it would be even more difficult to restrain him. Even if he joined forces with Tang Zheng and the Empyrean Fairy, they might not be able to defeat Qi Yu. Tian Chanzi fell into deep worry and said, Tang Zheng, Qi Yu's strength is most likely at the edge of the Grand Ascension stage. Shura might not necessarily be able to win. Tang Zheng's heart sank. He knew that Shura was only a hair's breadth away from the Grand Ascension stage because Dizong of Goguryeo was at the Grand Ascension stage, which was why he was able to suppress Shura. If Qi Yu's cultivation base was also at the edge of the Grand Ascension stage, then Shura would be at a disadvantage and they would be in danger. Tian Chanzi's guess was correct. If Qi Yu had found a good body and been reborn, then his cultivation base would definitely be at the Grand Ascension stage. However, he had taken a step back and found Song Yu's body at the last minute, so he was naturally far from being at the Grand Ascension stage. Currently, he was only at the peak of the 9th stage of the Soul Formation stage, which was only a hair's breadth away from the Grand Ascension stage. However, for Qi Yu, crossing this threshold was only a matter of time and would not take too long. The battle between Shura and Qi Yu was earth-shattering. Everyone was stunned. Tang Zheng had never seen a battle of this level other than in the Ghost Realm, so he could not hide the shock on his face. This time, not only did the demon elites retreat, but even Tang Zheng, Tian Chanzi, and Saint King had to retreat step by step. In the end, they retreated out of the range of the Tree of Life. In the distance, one could only see two people, one tall and one short, fighting with all their might. Shura had the advantage of height, but Qi Yu was more agile. He was like a flash of light, shuttling back and forth in midair. When his sword flashed, it would definitely bring a large amount of black qi to Shura's body. Shura did not have a real physical body. Although he was tall, he was formed from the fusion of countless vengeful spirits. Therefore, when he was injured, what left his body was a stream of yin qi. A stream of black yin qi surrounded the Tree of Life. The flowers and plants on the ground quickly withered and lay on the ground softly. In the end, they turned into a charred black color. The vitality in this space was being consumed little by little. In addition, Qi Yu's attack made this space even worse. It was a mess. The charred plants and trees danced in the air, and sand and stones flew. This oasis seemed to have turned into a barren desert. Shura suffered a lot from the War Soul Sword, and there were many wounds on his body. However, he did not retreat. Instead, he roared again and again, and attacked Qi Yu even more angrily. The Shura had only one thought, and that was to kill. Although it had suffered a lot, the killing intent in its heart grew stronger and stronger. The cold wind between heaven and earth roared angrily, as if it had become a ghost world. Qi Yu flew up and circled in front of the Shura. He roared, "So what if you're in Shura? Under the attack of my 9 Shaman Sword technique, you can only passively take a beating." The 9 Shaman Sword technique was Qi Yu's ultimate technique. There were only a total of 9 swords, and each sword contained a myriad of changes. This was a sword technique that he created by fusing various secret techniques passed down by the Shaman clan. It had to be said that Qi Yu was a genius. After summarizing the achievements of his predecessors, he mastered them and turned them into his own. This was what Tang Zheng had hoped for. A true peerless ranker did not only inherit the legacy of his predecessors, but also created something on the basis of it. This was a true peerless ranker. Without a doubt, Qi Yu was this kind of person. In fact, the Shaman clan had been around for a long time. Before Qi Yu, the Shaman clan was already a tribe that had existed for a long time. It was only under the leadership of Qi Yu that they truly flourished and obtained eye-catching achievements, almost unifying the world. The Shaman clan was the foundation of the Ninely tribe. Qi Yu came from the Shaman clan, and then led the Shaman clan to conquer the world. He unified the other 8 main tribes, and then merged them into the Ninely tribe. This was the origin of the Ninely tribe. But later on, many people only knew about the Ninely tribe, but they knew very little about the Shaman clan. The light on the War Soul Sword became more and more intense, so piercing that people could not open their eyes. Tang Zheng subconsciously narrowed his eyes into slits. This time, the power displayed by the War Soul Sword far exceeded the power in his hands, causing him to feel a sense of loss. Now that he saw the War Soul Sword erupt with such a powerful power, his heartstrings trembled. Suddenly, Tang Zheng realized that he had seen a double image. The War Soul Sword seemed to have turned from 1 into 2, 2 into 4, and finally into 9 shining swords. Tang Zheng suddenly opened his eyes. The sword light became more and more dazzling, burning his eyes until they hurt. However, he still persevered, clearly discovering that these swords were not double images, but real 9 swords. The War Soul Sword was something that Tang Zheng had refined bit by bit. He had never found out that the War Soul Sword could transform into 9 swords, which made him feel uneasy. He really knew too little about the War Soul Sword, especially that sword spirit. Although it had fused with the War Soul back then, the War Soul's consciousness was very weak and could not be compared to the sword spirit that had its own consciousness. Therefore, the sword spirit in the War Soul Sword was the foundation. He did not understand the sword spirit well enough, so his understanding of the War Soul Sword was also relatively limited. He stomped his feet hatefully and said, "Chi Yu is really a cunning old fox. You lied to me for so long." However, he did not know that the sword spirit was not an ordinary artifact spirit. This sword spirit was originally the sword spirit of Chi Yu's sword. However, in the Battle of Zhuolu, Chi Yu's sword was destroyed, but the sword spirit was left behind. The sword spirit and the sword attendant's soul fused into one. The sword attendant survived, but in the end, died in the sky pit of the Chombai Mountain. After countless years, the sword spirit and the sword attendant's soul were inseparable. Coincidentally, the sword spirit was discovered by the National Security Bureau and the people of the island nation. In the end, under the control of Chi Yu, the sword spirit fused with the War Soul Sword, increasing its quality. Chi Yu deliberately sealed the sword spirit's original memories, so that even the sword spirit itself could not remember what happened in the past. Therefore, when Tang Zheng released the sword spirit that had fused with the War Soul Sword, he did not notice this point. The sword spirit was like a piece of white paper, allowing Tang Zheng to draw on it. Unfortunately, the sword spirit was an unstable factor. Once Chi Yu opened the switch, the sword spirit's sealed memories would be restored, and it would return to its original appearance. The War Soul Sword naturally became the sword in Chi Yu's hand. Although Tang Zheng was not clear about the details, he could roughly guess what was going on. His expression became extremely ugly. This was equivalent to making wedding clothes for others, and it was all for naught. Tang Zheng stared at the War Soul Sword without blinking. The 9 swords seemed to be mocking him. He clenched his fists tightly and gritted his teeth. "Chi Yu, do you think the War Soul Sword will be snatched away by you, just like that? Even if you take my things away, I will take them back." Tang Zheng secretly swore. Tang Zheng was not someone who would easily admit defeat. Although he was tricked this time and suffered a setback, how could he give up just like that? Chi Yu glanced at Tang Zheng from the corner of his eyes and knew what he was thinking. He smiled faintly and said in his heart, "Tang Zheng, you want to take back the War Soul Sword, but you will never have the chance. This is my sword, and it was only temporarily in your hands before. Now that I have been reborn, how can there be a share for you? I will let you see its power and let you know what it means to cast pearls before swine and what it means to be covered in dust." In Chi Yu's eyes, the War Soul Sword in Tang Zheng's hands was just a dust-covered sword. Chi Yu pointed his finger, and 9 swords flew out. The Shuro was surrounded by the 9 swords, and he was firmly locked down by the 9 swords. "Break!" Chi Yu roared, and the 9 swords all trembled at the same time, releasing waves of high-pitched sword cries that were sharp and ear-piercing, as if they wanted to tear apart the space. Whiz! The 9 swords moved at the same time, stabbing towards the Shura from 9 different directions in a very tricky manner. Puff, puff, puff. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.